Surviving 500 days in a medieval Minecraft war. This is a compilation video of my 500-day journey that I started with my friends and my Discord community. And over time, we've built lore, had wars, and most importantly, made a lot of drama. This is a 4-hour Minecraft movie, which all started on the Murder Island. I'm making this compilation video because Medieval is returning soon with a new story and a new world. So if you're watching all this for the first time, lucky you. And if you've already seen all of these, maybe catch up on the lore and remind yourself, because some of your favorite players may be returning in this new world. If you enjoy this and excited for Medieval returning, hit that like button, and I'll see you soon in this new world. So, let me tell you my 100 days story of how I ended up in a cave, alone, in a custom world on the brink of war. Our story begins joining a server with a dark history. A 500-day-old server where past players were not so lucky to survive. This 100 days is the Murder Island. 500 days later, and 2 admins have asked a bunch of players to join the server to participate in this hardcore series. I was one of those players. The 2 admins we are referring to are Apex MC and Dapper. Every player who spawned on the island got a book. It said, "Welcome to the experiment." They said that this server is for their entertainment and we'll make sure it stays like that. And they said a simple message: keep us happy. And in the book contained a clue about the past people that had played on the server. It said, you guys aren't the first people. Head towards 00 to see the remains of the previous experimentations. The book also read saying this is a social experiment to see what happens when people have limited resources. I knew exactly what the admins wanted. They wanted chaos and they wanted us to all turn against each other. I knew that if we were going to survive this 100 days, we'd have to play together. And we would have to stay peaceful amongst each other because we are the threat. Not mobs, not lava, but other people are the threat. We are dangerous when left unchecked. At this current time, we were all in a Discord. All 20 of us were sitting in here. It was chaotic, but I tried to control the group. I tried to gather them up on the Mushroom Island so I could speak to them all before they ran off their separate ways. I gave them a speech and said that if we were going to survive this, we all needed to work together, or things would just turn to chaos. Whatever happened 500 days ago didn't end well, and we hopefully weren't going to meet the same fate as them. Since it was early days, everyone was optimistic and everyone wanted to be a team. Everyone agreed and we were all on the same sides. We all wanted to survive together. Or that's what I thought. Because as this series goes on, it's gonna slowly degrade. But you guys already know that. The first thing we wanted to do was we wanted to visit 00. We wanted to see what the past experimentation was. We were all curious. So we found the nearest island with trees and began making boats. We then set across the open sea, heading towards the center of the world. Later on day 1, we found land. This was 00. This was the center. Straight away we could see old remains of the past players that had played in the server. This island looked lifeless, like I hadn't seen life in a long time. We even found a horse that had been wandering the island for what looks like years. We quickly put him out of his misery. We wanted to explore the island, but with night falling, we took refuge in a house close by. We patched it up to stop the mobs getting in, and our first plan of action was to feed the weak. A lot of people were starving, and some players were close to death. As a group, we organized ourselves, attempting to feed the weakest first. But we didn't have long in the house until the admins got bored. They put up a sign saying, "Leave this now." And the admins were incredibly impatient. Striking down lightning on top of all of us. I don't know how we didn't lose a single soul, but I am on 2 hearts and I am close to death. Everybody scrambled and started running. I organized a team to head back to the boats. The admins clearly didn't want us living on this island. They had already seen people live here, and they don't want a repeat of what happened. They must want something new. They drove us off the island. I tried to do a head count to see if we had everyone here, and I felt like we were missing someone. So I headed back to the island to have a look. But the admins weren't letting us go anywhere near it. Striking down lightning to show, don't go here. If a person was lost, it's up to him to survive on his own. Good luck to him. We decided to start journeying far away, because the admins didn't want us anywhere near here. And also all the resources, all the sunken ships had been plundered by the past players that had played here. So we knew if we wanted resources, we needed to head far out. But this journey wasn't going to be easy. We had a serious food shortage. But we were all determined to get to our new settlement. We journeyed across the world, taking small breaks to gather resources and get little bits of food. But it wasn't long until we were on the move again. The admins were constantly taunting us, telling us to keep moving. I don't know how far they wanted us to go. As night was falling on day 3, we found a desert temple, and we decided to try and take refuge in here. A lot of us couldn't run, so mobs were a huge threat. This night wasn't easy though. The admins kept making holes into the desert temple so that mobs could rush through. We just kept patching, and we did our best. Later on that night, things started to calm down. The admins stopped trolling us, and we were able to quickly organize ourselves and feed the weakest. All the weak lined up against a wall, and we did our best to try and feed them. On the day 4 morning, we headed out. We weren't able to sprint, but we kept walking through the desert, still trying to find a place to settle. But on the day 4 afternoon, we ran into a problem. A player had gone missing. He just vanished. 2 players in a boat went out to search for him, but didn't find him. All that was left was just his boat. But with this commotion, we let our guard down. And a swamp zombie got Ripmonts. He was impaled by a trident. The first person to die on this great journey. We didn't even have time to grieve. We had to get out of there. We left the body behind. On day 5, we hit land. This land was starting to look a lot more habitable. This journey was nearly over. The player that vanished returned out of thin air. I tried to speak to him, but he didn't say much. It was suspicious, but I left it there. We also couldn't continue our journey without making a burial site for months. Rest in peace. It just showed us how dangerous this journey was. Later on that day, we found a village. And this village hadn't been touched by the previous players. This means we're in an area where 500 days ago, the past occupants didn't come to. We desperately raided this village for resources, and then we continued on. When just over the river, by the village, we found the place that we wanted to settle. We were gonna make this our home. We even stood here for a while waiting for the admins to strike lightning down, but nothing happened. We will call this our home, all together and unified. We're gonna survive. It wasn't so long until the admins awakened, giving us a so-called gift. The gift was basically telling us that we can only use stone, wood, and leather items only, as they refer to it, keeping us in the Stone Age. All I saw it as was making it harder to survive. Not being able to make iron armor, diamonds, it just makes mobs more of a threat. I feel like they were punishing us for playing all together. I gave the book to Jack. Jack gave the book to another person, and it spread like wildfire. Everyone knew we were stuck in the Stone Age. The village was coming along nicely. The only problem is that we still had a food shortage. With this many players, it's a lot of mouths to feed. And I knew the best way of feeding people without burning too much energy would be fishing. But to do that, we needed to find some spiders for string to make the rod. So on a day 9 night, I headed out looking for spiders. And I managed to find enough spiders to be able to make myself a rod and Jack. We would hopefully get enough food for the village altogether. But the food shortage was causing tension in the camp, because an argument broke out between food. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but there were 2 players scrapping. And out of rage, Emerald Horn was murdered by Brody. You could look at him and see the guilt in his eyes straight away. He regretted his actions. He was hungry, and we knew it. We all were. Desperate for food. But that doesn't mean you get to take someone away. Actions that he just took was probably the demise of the last players that played this server. We asked Brody to quietly come into the forest with us. I think he knew exactly what was about to happen. But he knew if he ran, he was dead anyway. I knew what I had to do, even though I didn't want to do it. But we had to be strong. I had to show others that I was a strong leader, and this wouldn't stand. An eye for an eye. Strangely, when I got back to camp, no one even spoke about it. Everyone was just acting like life went back to normal. I think because everyone agreed that the actions that I took were completely justified. With the fishing rod made, it was time to get fishing. This means now that all the village was working on collecting different types of food. And in no time, we would have enough food to be able to not worry about it anymore. We all just had to keep working hard. While fishing, I noticed that Caden was just watching us, not saying anything. He hadn't spoke since he'd vanished on our journey. He intrigued me, and I wanted to talk to him more. But this was the last time that I ever saw Caden. Will I ever see him again? While fishing, Jack had spotted that a mill had dropped iron boots near the riverbed. We weren't allowed to make iron, and it's like he was trying to make other players pick it up so that they could get punished. After this, I started watching the mill. I noticed how he was stumbling around the camp, and I saw that he was interacting with a chest. He looked very suspicious, and he wasn't doing a great job. To me, it's almost like he wanted to get caught. I went over to investigate the chest. And to my shock, I saw that he had put an iron helmet inside. I don't know what he was up to, but he was trying to sabotage this camp. Quickly, I ran down. I grabbed the boots and I grabbed the helmet. I knew exactly where to get rid of this evidence. And I burned them as quick as I could before the admins could notice. This is when myself, Jack, and Mikey left the camp to have a chat about what we could do with a mill. Jack and I wanted to quietly murder him. He was trying to sabotage our camp after all, but Mikey made the valid point that he hadn't done any harm to any player yet. And the people of the community would just think that we murdered him and could raise their arms against us. So we went back to the camp with the best solution we could think of. We confronted the mill and we told him to follow us. Of course, he was hesitant. Who wouldn't be? We decided that the best option was to banish a mill, and we told him that. He denied all of his actions, but then not long after, he admitted to it all. And he went his separate way. I knew that it was unrealistic to think that peace could stay. But I was doing my best to make sure I can keep that happening. That's when Apex shortly turned up, proving in some way that they're always watching. We went back to the camp and we gathered as many people as we could. And we told them the truth, that we had banished the mill and everything that he was up to. If this was going to work, we'd all have to trust each other. No secrets. This was when someone raised the alarm about Caden. Where was he? He was on the server. But he wasn't here. No one had seen him for a few days. Going back to a little bit of fishing, I managed to fish myself out a Piercing 4, Unbreaking 3, Fortune 3 book. But there was one slight problem. We were currently stuck in the Stone Age. So this book was rendered useless, but will be really handy for when we're allowed to advance. But later on that day I had all the food we needed. Everyone was doing great. The food shortage had been solved. After the food crisis was sorted, the village started thriving. We started coming alive, working as a group, and over the days, the village really formed. It was going fantastic. I've never had a better bunch of people to survive with in my life. This was really looking positive, and it felt great. On day 26, I woke up in my nasty house. It wasn't the best build I'd ever done, but I wanted to make sure that I kept it to the village theme. When I logged onto the server, it was early morning, and there was only few of us on. Jamie, Jack, and myself decided to go on a bit of an interesting mission. It was early morning, so we expected the admins not to be on. Now, we can't tell when they are, because they're in Vanish. But we took a guess they weren't. And we decided that we would head back to the center of the world. Back to the island that the admins didn't want us on. Why? Because we thought we could find loot and treasure from the previous players 500 days ago. Technically, if we find that, we won't be breaking the rules. Because we didn't make it. We just found it. We were being cheeky. As we were about to hit the water to head to the island, we noticed that Ripmont's grave had been changed. Almost evil looking. Someone had clearly messed with it. And we knew who. It was definitely the admins because of this shovel. No players could do this. This was some sort of plugin or command. I don't know what they were up to, but they had done something. After we were done investigating it, we continued to the Murder Island. And after a few days, we landed on the island. No lightning, no commotion. It was still. This island was eerily quiet. Who knows what happened here? But whatever it did, it must have not ended great. Legends say that one survivor managed to leave the island, and everyone else perished. But who knows? We stumbled into a graveyard. We found a grave of a past player. We checked their burial chests for loot, but didn't find much. We made our way on top of this hill, and we found a chest, left by the admin, with a clue to the Nether portal, saying that it's located in the Badlands, which is a mesobiome. But little did we know that this Nether portal would exist in another world entirely. One that we're soon heading towards. We just didn't know it yet. As we were making our way home, this is when everything started to crumble. It was later on in the day. Everyone was on, and the Discord erupted. We're being attacked, they said. Sheer panic broke out. And it was every player for themselves. Phoebes even killing Spiritfall in the chaos. It was hard to make out exactly what was going on and what exactly caused this. But as we got closer, it started to become clear. Emil had returned with his new gang. The admins had helped him out, gave him the resources he needed to cause chaos and make it fun for the admins. The admin knew that we were beating them at their own game. I got close to the village and Jack and Jamie left me. They didn't want to come in. I tried to tell them that I wanted to get my Fortune 3 book. It was buried in a chest in my house. That's when I know it's fatal. He was wearing netherite armor. This was the first time seeing this player. I don't know how he got this armor, because we were the first person to find the clue about the Nether portal. I knew this would happen. I wasn't surprised. I was just surprised about how savagely they did it. They had no respect for what we had made. But this is an experiment after all. This is what the admins want. They want to be entertained. I snuck in and got my book. I so badly wanted it because I knew the Fortune 3 pickaxe would come in handy. It allowed me to get diamonds and attempt to get revenge as fast as possible. I started making my way over to the farming sector to get as much resources as I could so that we wouldn't have another food shortage. But Emil and his gang was already over there. And one of them was in netherite. That's when I noticed more of them. And they were in iron armor. The admins had clearly allowed them to advance faster than us. And they were a more powerful civilization than us at the moment. And I had to let them do what they had to do. This is hardcore after all, and I can't die. That's when I noticed Ripmons lagging behind. The admins had revived him. Now the grave makes sense. Why it was changed. I must admit, I like the little details that the admins put into the show. Really makes it come alive. Slept in the bed quickly. So it was only players who were a threat to me, and not mobs on top of that. I knew at this point that every village member had gone. The village was broken, fractured, and split to pieces. They had all formed their own groups, and they were now in their own discords. Jack and Jamie had left me. I was in a discord by myself. I was gathering what I could. I gathered as much food as I could take, and I started heading back to the main village area. Thinking that Emil and his gang was now gone, I wanted to get to our storage area to see if there's anything else I could scavenge. But as I got closer, I could see Emil and his gang were still in the area. This is when I became very close to death. They were coming closer to me. All I had was the trees as cover. But I could hear the fire behind me. I had to stay still. I knew any movement or uncrouching, I would be seen and potentially killed. I got lit on fire, but luckily I was able to stay crouched, and there was a mushroom covering me. It looked to me that Emil and his gang were leaving. This was getting interesting. And just as quickly as they came, they left. They were complete savages. Everything that we had worked on was destroyed. They didn't have any respect. Later on that day, we got informed that the admins were taking us to a new world, one where we could conquer the lands and show who really is the dominant clans. But I don't care about all of that. My goal now and for the foreseeable future is tracking down and hunting anyone who was responsible for this attack. And I would kill them all one by one, leaving Emil Ruse last. Bring on the new world. Overnight, the old world vanished and a new one began. That's right, we're in a new world and it's custom, which you can find a link for down in the description below. But the admins have given us this world with a few rules, which I'll explain very soon. But the admins allowed us to choose where we wanted to spawn. I chose the forest area in the middle of the map, hoping that's where everyone would go and I would find more people and we could take a crack at making another settlement again and trying to keep the peace. And also just so I'm not alone. Straight away I did the Minecraft things. I grabbed wood and I killed some animals. I was fortunate enough that the admins gave us a bit of a starter kit. But I originally spawned here because I wanted to find other players. I could have went on Discord and I could have asked who's around. But I wanted to find people organically. And to make this interesting. I knew there were other people alone like me and I knew there were people also in groups. I was more looking for the loners. So that we could band together and have a common cause. And that's surviving. But the first day in this new world, I didn't see any signs of life. Other than the animals I had slain. But I was fortunate enough to find a cave. And this is where I'll be calling my home for the foreseeable future. That night I made myself a campfire. And I cooked up all the meat I had gotten. My goal for the next morning was to go out exploring again. And make another attempt at finding life. For the next few days I wandered about. Looking for players, but I found no one. This is when I felt the true scale of this world, and just how big it is. I decided I would just get on with it. I'm alone, and that's just how it is. And for many days I survived by myself, slowly gathering resources, making this cave feel more homely. And this brings us back to the start. Of how I ended up in a cave alone, by the events that have happened. I could have just started my 100 days here, but I wanted to tell you the full story of how it ended up like this. But now the admins have given us a new world, for people to forge their own story, but with some simple rules. And they are, we are only allowed to live in this custom world. We can adventure out, beyond it, but we can only settle here. It's hardcore. If you die, you're gone. And the most interesting part of all, there are 13 god weapons scattered across the map. These weapons are powerful, but their main role is to tell you who owns what land. This show is all going to be about building up nations and defending yourself from others that want to cause harm. And my goal is to build a nation that will bring the world stability. and wage war on anyone who tries to stop that. Welcome to my new 100 Days series. Let's see how long I will survive for. So going back to the story, with my goal now for the series of protecting the world and squishing anyone who wants to upset that, I knew I would need to build my own nation with like-minded people that hopefully who just want to survive and thrive together. So with the resources that I had gathered over the days, I built a beacon right by the waterway with hopes that people would be attracted by this build and that they would see my sign. I hope one day to make a great nation here, one that everyone on the server respects. 2 days later, I logged on the server. I didn't notice much at the start, but then I looked down and there was life and it was bustling. People had seen the beacon and a town was being created right in front of my eyes. The beacon had worked, and over the next few days I got to know all these people. We all had the same goal in mind, but time was ticking against us. We needed to find the god weapon for our land so no one could contest our town. If we find the god weapon, we are the rightful people for this land. We own it, so we need to find it. And we did. And a few days later there was great excitement because the god weapon for our land had been found. That was one worry we didn't have to think about now. Stealthy, the miner of the group, had found it up in the mountains. It was a hammer called the Stormlander, which looked absolutely epic. And there was a book that read, "Congrats, you have just found yourself a god weapon. You are the rightful king or queen of this land. These weapons are responsible for showing who owns what continents. The person who owns these weapons are the rightful owners. Without this weapon, your claim to this land is false. Look on Discord to see what lands you own with this specific weapon." We had done it. We found the weapon. We owned this land. This was everything we now own, rightfully. It doesn't mean people can't contest it though. We now had this great weapon, but it can't just be given to someone. We need to take a vote for who's going to be our king or queen. Who's going to lead us? So Sorrow here decided to build the town hall. Right here where the beacon was. It felt fitting. It's the thing that brought us all together. A town hall should go here. This is where the vote will be taking place. 1 weekend later and the great town hall was built by the amazing community that we had. Look at this building, it looks amazing. It stands out over all the rest of the houses, which it should. This is our main meeting area. This is the council room. The place where we solve all debates and where we log all the citizens living in the land. This is amazing. Later that day, the vote took place. Myself, Soccer, and Red Shadow were running for king or queen. Everyone took their turn taking their speech.
For my plan, what I will do is if I'm king, I plan to expand our commerce of our wood trade, and I plan to make it so that we sell wood to every continent on this earth.
I would like to be queen because I would like to, of course, expand our village within our own island and also other islands.
I want to bring stability, peace, and offer refuge to everyone on the server and crush anyone who attempts to try and oppose that. Then everyone voted. And by a landslide, Soccer had won the vote. He was now our ruler, our leader, whatever you want to call him. And Soccer got straight to ruling. He suggested we should name the town, the capital city of this nation. And since the god weapon that we own is called the Stormlander, I said we should name the town Stormslanding. A bit of a Game of Thrones reference. But all this didn't matter, because over the excitement, we were publicly broadcasting that we were voting for king or queen of our nation to the whole server to see. And a certain player was moving in to seize the opportunity. He stormed the village and stormed the town capital, where every single citizen in the town was. This was a takeover. Emil demanded from Soccer that he hands over the god weapon, which, after an awkward standoff, Soccer hands over the weapon. And I am not mad at him at all for this. He did the right thing. For doing this, no blood was dropped. Emil was now our ruler. We were now governed by him and his nation. We were a part of that now. And for now, we had to respect that. This is what this server is all about. It's about politics. It's about evil versus good. And while we have been trying to build a nation, Emil had just been taking nations from others. All their hard work. Emil had managed to strike again. He didn't burn down our town like he did last time. This time, I feel like he did something much worse. He had stolen all our hard work and claimed it for himself. I feel like as a player and as a leader, I had let my team down. And in the next 100 days, I will need to take this town back or die trying. Yeah. Enjoy. My nation and the players that live inside it were now under Emil's occupation. We had to follow his rules, like no weapons of any sorts, and all diamond tools and armor, and of course weapons, are not allowed. Over the few days that I lived inside the town, I didn't see much of Emil, but that's because MB, his second in command, was in charge of the town. And Emil had ordered him to build a castle just south of the city on a secluded island, which I must admit is a perfect place for a castle. It's isolated and we can't get to it unless we go across this dangerous bridge. But here's where things start getting deep. This road that was leading to the castle was getting closer to the town, and they were constructing it fast. And there was a house in the way of the road. This was Fife's house. Fife was the leader of the resistance, and I was part of that. That's right, we had a resistance going on in the town. A lot of the members were not happy with Emil's rules. But at the time when Emil captured the town, we weren't in a very strong position. But over the last few days, we've been gearing ourselves up quietly underground. But last night when I wasn't on the server, we took a massive blow. Missing Gnome was a player in the resistance, and he was storing a lot of our stuff in an underground basement. A hidden one, of course. And Emil and his team managed to find it, seizing all the weapons and all the armor we had managed to save up. Gnome managed to escape and hasn't came back since. There are signs all around the town. He's a wanted man. And he's wanted alive. All the supplies we worked for are now in the Skeleton Keep. That's what they call the castle. With Gnome now gone and our supplies all dwindling, we knew that storing valuable gear inside our house would get found, eventually. And with the imminent bulldozing of Fife's house, he knew he had to move everything out. So I decided I would leave my cave house and I would move out to the wilderness of the Stormslanding region. If I move away, it won't cause any suspicion. At the end of the day, I live in a cave. It's time to make a real house. But this house would be responsible for everyone being able to bring their gear here and to be able to safely store it. It was early in the morning and barely anyone was online in the server, so I was leaving town. I grabbed a horse from Missing Gnome's boarded up house and I rode to the furthest end point of Stormslanding territory. That way I was far enough away as possible, but still inside the land, and I couldn't be punished for that. I spent a few days working on my house, and I must admit I got overly invested in this because I can't build. And for once I wanted to build a respectful house that looks decent. So I struggled building for a few days, trying to make a roof that I kept failing at, and then I finally came up with this. This is the best I can make. For me, I think it looks amazing. The inside is what really gives it. I just like the different layers to it. But the main thing inside here is the chimney. And you might be wondering why. Well, that's where I have all the secret stuff that is about to be stored. See, that's where I'm going to be storing all the secret resistant gear. Right above the chimney, I had put barrels up there because everybody searches houses and they always check walls and underground. But I'm not sure if they check roofs so much. This was kind of disguised. And I was even building a cellar down below, so if my house gets roundly checked, they're gonna assume if anything's hidden here, it's gonna be in the cellar. It's the perfect place to hide some stuff. That's what I wanted them to think. Over the next few days, everyone started coming, taking all the contraband that they had inside their houses and bringing it to my farm. I was responsible for hiding all this, and I stored it right in the chimney. Everything now was safely here. Or, that's what we thought. Fife Miner was getting evicted. It wasn't a shock. We all saw it coming. MB, following a Mill's order, was evicting Fife and Cozy from their house. He gave them little to no time to move everything out quickly. In fairness, Fife should have been more prepared for this. He saw it coming. Long story short, they got impatient and started burning down the house. But the problem was C-Tech was in the tower while the house was up in flames. His frame rates plummeted, and during this chaotic scene, he fell to his death right off the tower. Just like that, a town member gone. But we were told we weren't allowed to have a funeral or bury him. They had other plans for the body. And just when things couldn't get more worse, they had found contraband inside Fife's house. They found diamond armor and a few weapons. Fife had clearly made a mistake and not moved everything out. He had so many secret barrels scattered all around the house, and he missed it. This time they weren't making the same mistake as they did with Gnome. And on the spot they arrested and captured Fife, taking him to the castle. The next time I see him won't be for a very long time. When MB and his guards left, the rest of the members got chatting, and some of the players were quite annoyed. They were sick of the constant bullying, and after this, the group kind of fell apart, dissolving into nothing. Some people left the town for a better life, and some people stayed, just accepting the rules. When returning to the town one night, hiding my pickaxe and diamond axe in my inventory, I saw Aram burning down what was once a beautiful windmill. Burning down someone's hard work and just watching it burn. But sadly, I was kind of used to these sorts of actions, so I continued with the job that I was here for. I wanted to go mining and grab some cobblestone, since I was going low in that and I wanted to build a barn at my base. I was kind of enjoying building, to be honest, during all this chaos. But as I was mining, something clicked in me. I suppose I was thinking. I was bored, and I was fed up with being under this rule and waiting for the right moment to strike. So I rushed home. I grabbed the best gear I could muster, and all the supplies I could carry. Because I knew once I did this deed that I wasn't coming back, and I wouldn't be able to stay living here. At least next time when I return, I'll have to come back with an army, and fight to get this nation back. That's when, grabbing gear, I stumbled across a book. A book from Gnome, which I actually hadn't have seen. It read, "I have long heard a rumor of a powerful weapon to the west. Hopefully its power will be strong enough to fight back against the oppression menace that is the mill. I'm going to undertake this journey and discover this weapon." Now, I didn't know at this point if Gnome had found the weapon or not. At this point, it had been a very long time. And I could have messaged Gnome on Discord, asking him. But I like the mystery of actually searching for players. So we'll have to see on that one. But when I leave, this is a great place to go search for. I rode into town, but this time I wasn't hiding my weapon. I was in full contraband armor and I was ready to fight. I didn't know how many were online on a Mills team, but I was gonna fight, and no matter what, if I died, I died. It wouldn't be the first time I haven't made it fully to 100 days. But as I rode closer, I saw Aram, and this was perfect. This was the guy who burnt down the windmill. The guy that kicked us all off. We went into a fight, and by the seams of it, Aram wasn't ready for it. Cozy had just witnessed what I just did, but that wasn't a problem. He wasn't part of the resistance anymore, and he was just trying to get along living here. But I knew he wouldn't rat on me too much. It didn't really matter. At the end of the day, it says Aram was slain by RyanNotBrian. It's no secret. But I beckoned Cozy to pick up all the loot. I know that he'll hide it somewhere, and it can come in useful. After that, I got back on my horse, and I left town. For good. Time for a new chapter.
Goodbye, Virginia.
I sailed off into the night. And when the sun rose, I had hit land, and it was a jungle biome. Which means I was going in the right direction. I was told by a good friend, who is now living in this tribal town, that the way to get there is to follow the jungle shore, and then look for the first opening, and head down the river. And just follow that until you get there. So that's what I did. After trekking the shores for a while, I found a campfire, signaling some sign of life. This map is massive, and going around the shores really shows the scale of it. But I had managed to find the river that they were talking about, that leads inland. It was a paradise, tucked away from all the dramas of the world. It's the kind of place you go to when you want to retire from making 100-day movies. But the friend I was talking about who now lives here is Jack. He did live in Stormslanding, but when a mill in his occupation took place, Jack left and came here. When I got here, it was only Jack online. The rest of the people that lived in this tribal village weren't online. The plan was to convince this village to fight for us. They seem like a peaceful nation, so chances are, they probably won't fight. Later that day when I logged on, I saw a new person. A native of the village, I suppose. Everyone was now logging online. I dropped Phoebes a rod as a gift for letting me come here. And now finally, with the serpent glaive on our back, the leader of this tribal town had logged online. And long story short, I told her the whole story. Even giving her the book that Gnome sent. They said they were a peaceful village, but at the end of the day, a mill's just gonna come for them eventually once they find him. So they agreed when the time comes, they'll fight. This town was now an ally. They'll protect us, and we'll protect them. Now, it was time to leave. And it was time to venture down to Gnome, and to find him, and whatever he's up to. It was the next day, and when I was leaving, nobody was online. This little peaceful village was sleeping. And I left, going into the darkness. I traveled west until I hit land, and when I got here it was a luscious savanna. It looked so inviting, but that savanna didn't last. This land territory was harsh, and it was desert all around. I ventured looking for signs of life. This is when I stumbled across what looked like a cross. I'm not sure if this is an arrow, or if someone died here. And a friend marked the grave, but curiosity got the better of me. And I suppose out of disrespect I decided to dig under it. But there was nothing there. I took it as a sign. Maybe it's an arrow. And I went straight on from where the arrow was pointing. And I stumbled across cobblestone walls. Well, what looked to be the foundation of them. Now I had to be careful. I went up to the walls, looking to see if I can see anyone. I took my sword out just in case. I found a lovely bridge. I was confident this was Gnome, but I was just being safe. I crossed the bridge and now I could see a castle starting to appear on the horizon. But it was Gnome. I knew by the skin. Gnome was right. He had managed to find the weapon that gives him the rightful heir to this land. which means now he has the right to build up his own nation and to start fresh. I gave him the book that led me to him, and he gave it back. I was quite relieved to see that he had a castle, and that he was geared, and that he had other members, which is more important, because what's going to win this war is players. They gave me a tour of the base that they were building. It wasn't finished yet, but I could see it coming along nicely. Gnome's building a great nation here. Let's just hope that we can bring the world to peace, so this nation can actually come alive. In Discord, Gnome told me about a local faction that lived in the other landmass that bordered their territory. He told me they were a rich faction and that they would probably fight for a pretty penny. Obviously, without question, Gnome was gonna fight to take back our land. And then he would return here and we would be good allies. But now, we need to get this other team on board and see will they fight for us and not for a mill. I stayed with Gnome for a few days, watching him build his tower that is coming along very nicely, as you can see. But it was time to get back to war planning. We had contacted the other team that Gnome told us about and we were heading over to now meet them. I didn't know the way, but Gnome knew exactly where to go. So we set sail off together. I must admit, it's nice being out of the town because now I get to see all the creations that everyone's actually working on. It's nice to see this world coming together one way or another. But 2 days passed and we hit land. We were now in the territory of another team, but hopefully we'll be convincing this team to fight alongside us. Gnome had told me that this is a team that lives out in the desert, hidden away. Not many people venture out here, for the fact there's nothing to plunder. It's lifeless. Luckily we had plenty of water, we stocked up well before this journey. But Gnome knew the way, and it wasn't long until we found their base. Their castle, their nation, whatever you want to call it. And holy smokes, it looks amazing. This side of the world had been flourishing because it's been untouched by a mill and any hostile people. It's been relatively peaceful. And with peace, things can flourish and nations can really build. I thought we were doing great progress with our town, but it seems like someone else was doing a lot better. The leader of this nation was Mikey, a good friend of mine. And he had built up an amazing team. We all got chatting in Discord. He knew exactly why I was here. He'd seen the video before. We had a good chat, and long story short, Mikey wanted to fight with us. See, Mikey's team was a mining town, and they wanted to make a bank where they can store all sorts of valuable items and dangerous ones in the future, and pay a price for the people that want to use their services. But they do one thing. Since they live in the desert, they don't grow their own food, so they rely on trading. So Mikey had one request, that if we take back the town and our nation, we'll trade food with them for the next 100 days absolutely for free. And without question, I accepted. We now had 3 nations backing our mission. And Mikey's nation was our main sponsor. They were rich and had the resources that we needed. And I was confused how they had so much resources. But then it became pretty clear. They showed me the mine that they had made. They even made it look cosmetically amazing. And as you ventured down to the bottom of it, it came clear. This team had a lot of stone and a lot of resources. Enough to supply an army. At least with all iron gear anyway. It was now time to head to war. But before we could do that, before we could set off on our journey and head home, Gnome needed to go home and gather his players. So we gave him a horse and he rode off. He said he'll meet us in the nearby town of JD Kellyville. Now with just Mikey's team and me, it was now time to set off. We had donkeys carrying a bunch of loot, mostly with cobblestone and just general resources, so that when we land we can build a castle. Something that we can hold our ground in, because let's be real, it won't be long until Emil and his team find out that we're back and that we're here for war. But as the sun rose, we trekked across to a nearby town, a neutral nation. Later on that day, we landed in JD Kelly's nation. JD Kelly, like I said, he was a neutral nation. He didn't have many members, and he wasn't going to be in the fight. But still, he was very useful, because we were going to be storing all our horses and our donkeys here. And then he's going to be shipping them across the world to where we're going to be landing. All for a price, which Mikey's paying for. Kindly as well, JD Kelly had set down a bunch of boats that we can use to trek home. This is when I kind of knew that JD Kelly wasn't fully neutral. He was clearly on our side. But I suppose when there's an evil person on the server, it doesn't matter. You can't really be neutral. You gotta pick sides eventually. I think he knows that. But before we could set off, I waited on the bridge, because this was the area where Gnome said he would meet us with his players and his team. And he arrived just on time. We were now ready to set off and head back home, but this time with an army. We sailed home slowly and carefully. One, due to the lag that was happening on the server, and also we wanted to avoid all the detections of the guard towers and everything they have in the water. If this many players got spotted, they would know exactly what we were up to. The goal is to land back at home and build a castle as soon as possible before we get spotted. So at least that when they spot us, they can't run us off the land instantly. Finally, after a long journey, I was home, back on my native land. And instantly I could see that someone had taken over my area. I wasn't sure who. But I did notice my house was now a burnt wreck. Clearly Emil and his team had done that. But who was living here now? Was it one of Emil's members? Was it now one of the resistance? I didn't know. No one knew. But whoever lived here wasn't online. Gnome and his team are about to turn this into a castle, a fortress, a place where we can hold down the fort. And if Emil comes with his first wave, we can repel, and then conquer the battlefield from there. But before he can build, JD Kelly needs to do his mission, and do the awkward journey of delivering the horses and the mules across the ocean. And a few days passed and we had a great castle. The barn build had been converted into an amazing fortress. And we had built more than just a fortress. We had built a new town without realizing it. The players had really adapted to this way of life. And far from home, they made a new home. This was great to see. This means they were dedicated to the cause. Gnome and his team, I must give credit. They had done 90% of this work. They're an amazing building team. And so far, we had not been spotted by Emil and his team. Things are going great. Until we got the alert on Discord that Emil and his team had found us. They had built a camp on the outskirts of town. I was late to log online, and Mikey and Gnome had ordered people not to leave the base. Our team had just watched them build a camp and we'd done nothing about it. A battle is coming. Emil now knew I was online, and he wasn't dumb. He knew this wasn't some foreign invader coming in to take the land. He knew it was one of us. Emil and his team came onto the battlefield. But it's like they didn't want to fight just yet. Emil wanted to talk. So we rode out to meet him. He placed down his banners as some sort of taunt. But I didn't care at this point. But we started speaking on how we can resolve this issue. But it's Emil. And there's no resolving anything with him. I asked him, does he want to solve it with politics or war, and he chose war. So war it is. Battles will be fought, and whoever wins this war will be the true leader of this land. Once and for all. But we both agreed no battles would be taking place today. But Emil, being Emil, wanted to at least shed some blood on this great field. Emil brought forward Fife, who was on the back of a horse. Fife was the leader of the resistance, who got captured. Emil wanted a 1v1 fight. One person from his team and 1 person for Mars. If we win, we get 5 back. If we lose, 5 dies. And if we didn't agree to do this, 5 dies anyway. We rode back into the base and closed the gates quickly behind us. This is where we had a discussion of who would be fighting. But I heard it was Fatal who they were letting fight, and he was going to be fighting whoever represented us as a team. But when I heard it was Fatal, I knew that I had to fight. 1, it shows strong leadership. But 2, Fatal had burnt down my original village in the old world. So if I can get the kill here, I will be satisfied. But here's where we take a quick pause, and we talk about Emil and his staff, and the history behind it. Emil's weapon is not really a god weapon. It doesn't do damage, but it does something very great. Emil has the power to bring dead players back to life, and his weapon is called the Staff of the Undead. How original. And if a player is revived, they must follow the person who holds the staff loyally. No questions asked. That's the rules we set up on the server. How does he revive the dead, you ask? Well, the rules are simple with this. He has to find the location where the player died at, or is buried. I wasn't feeling overly confident. As you can see, Fatal holds a god weapon. I hold none at this current time. When the arrow hits the floor, it's time to fight. The fight went on all night, and I was going low on supplies. I had just eaten my last golden apple, and I had no survivability left. And to rub salt in the wounds, my helmet had popped, and I ran into the gate. Running for my life. I was on the brink of death. But my team stepped in and drove Fatal out of the castle. I had just ran from a fight to death. Very dishonorable. But here's the thing. It was better to run, because Emil would have raised me from the dead, and I would have had to fight on his side. There's no honor in that. But Emil's team got angry. Emil clearly wanted me to die and join his side, and with anger he launched a little scale attack, firing catapults into the base. Our team held him back for long enough until they retreated back to camp. It was now time to lick my wounds. After those events, a few real days passed, and I wasn't on the server for a little while. And when I logged on, Mikey had told me to read a book that one of Emil's guys had left outside the base. And it read, "You have 15 days and the war begins." So on day 182, the battle for this land begins. Now I wasn't on the server for 4 days, and now there were only 11 days left. But Mikey had hooked me up with a deal. He told me to travel to JD Kelly, and there he will trade his full set of god gear to me. Him and Mikey had set some sort of deal up for when the Nether opens on the server. So I rushed to collect my armor. Jamie then handed over the god set that he was working on. For a neutral nation, I don't really know why he was working on a god set. But like I said, I don't really think he's neutral. With now the god set in my inventory, I headed home to get ready for war. After days of prepping, digging secret tunnels all around the castle in case we need to escape, the team grinding for arrows to repel the forces that are about to come. It was now time for this battle to begin. Emil's team and our team, we had made a mini-game out of it, and we had set up some ground rules. If they managed to break into the castle and push us out, they are the rightful owners to this land. And then for our side, if we manage to push Emil back all the way to the castle and drive them out, we are then the rightful owners to this land. Just remember, this battle's about to begin, and it's hardcore. Once you die, you're gone forever. So let's see if Emil really thinks this is worth dying for. Time to get into position. When the moon drops under the horizon, the battle begins. A few members of Emil and his allies had already fallen. Our goal at the start of the battle was to destroy all the trebuchets in sight. After a few more kills came in, Emil ordered a retreat, and they started their returns to Stormslanding. As a unit, we all pushed forward, this time banding into one group, not multiple groups. I ordered everyone out of the castle, except a small reserve, to protect if any surprises come along. Before we followed them to Stormslanding, we burnt down the camp, so they couldn't return. We had just won the first battle, but we have not won the war. It is not over yet. But morale is high. And with that, we used the adrenaline to charge across the country. Until we reach the next chapter of the fight. And that's the fight for Stormslanding. The town that I want to get back. It had been a long time since I was home. And there was now a new bridge. Things looked slightly different. Arrows were exchanged back and forth across the bridge. This was dangerous. Going across the water would leave us vulnerable, but going across the bridge leaves us open to flame arrows. The only way we're getting across here is if we all go together. So that's what we did. As a unit, we all pulled out our shields. Every single one of us. People that didn't have shields stayed behind others that did. We were successful. We blocked a ton of arrows until we found out that the bridge was trapped. And it blew up, causing chaos among our group. Luckily, no one died, but some people were close to death. With this, I took the order. It's now or never. Charge across and attack. My eyes were on Fatal. I wanted to get revenge finally for burning down my camp, and just as he tried to pearl away, he popped, dying. After killing Fatal, we chased his bodyguard down too. All together, killing him. 2 more players are now down. It's now time to take back the castle. They retreated. The town was now ours, and they were now at the gatehouse. But we were so quick charging through the town, they had no time to close the gate. We had taken the gatehouse without even blowing up the gate. Our goal right now was to clear the rest of the people out of this structure. There was only one left, and I managed to get the killing blow on him. All that was standing in our way was us and Skeleton Keep. At this point, it didn't matter if we killed them or not. We just wanted our land back. So we waited for the reserves at our castle to come in, and then we will do the final push to take Skeleton Keep and drive them out of this land. Push this back, hit the front door. It doesn't matter if you're hitting inside.
Yeah.
Okay, now 5. Push behind the sugar
So
trees, everyone.
there's a tower directly inside the gate on the right, and there should be a wooden door on it, and it will lead directly inside the keep. Then there's a tower. There's a tower in the corner that has a staircase that goes up to all the different floors.
With no way into the castle, I knew what I had to do. The catapults weren't working. I took my shield out and edged my way closer to the door, placing down TNT at the gate. And flooding all into the castle. We had successfully driven all of them out of the castle. A few players from our team went on the journey to try and track them down and hunt any stragglers, while the rest of us explored the castle, looking for anyone that might be hiding here. Remember, our goal is to take this land back. After initial scout and looking around, the castle was clear. We had now taken back Stormslanding. And I know what you might be thinking. That I should be the king of Stormslanding. That was a lot of the comments that said. But you guys don't see a lot of behind the scenes. Or just what goes on in the server. And Soccer and Five, they really love this town. And they run it really well. So Soccer, our king, brought Mikey up to say thank you for everything he's done. And Herb, well, he took Gnome's place because Gnome wasn't here today. Without our allies, without Forest, without Mikey, without Gnome, we wouldn't have been able to stomp them out like this. Mission well done. And this brings us to the end of this current 100 days. We have our nation back. It took a lot of work and a lot of planning. But this story isn't over yet. Emil still isn't dead. Bring on the next chapter. In my last 100 days that I was on the server, I was in a war, taking back my land, where I originally spawned 200 days ago. The nation was captured by a guy who's called Emil, and he's one of the most evil players on the server. After the war, I retreated to this jungle village, lost in the jungle, where time seems to stand still. The leader of this nation is Forest. She owns one of 13 god weapons that were originally scattered across the world when the server first begun. These weapons are unique and one of a kind, and each weapon is attached to a land claim. So if you own this weapon, you own the land it's responsible for. The player that has a bounty on their head is a player who goes by the name of Wilbo. He's wanted for the weapon that he yields, called the Great Hammer, which is responsible for this land claim right here. And this is also a personal bounty, because let me give you a history lesson. 100 days ago in the war, when Emil's army tried to stop us from taking back our nation, Wilbo and his nation sided with Emil and tried to stop us taking back our home. But we managed to drive them out, and with that Emil scampered back to his nation, and Wilbo ran to his. So this story begins when myself and Jack are summoned back home to our nation to attack Wilbo and his land, to take his home away from him. Jack and I started heading down to Stormslanding. Jack was also part of Stormslanding. It's where he spawned and where he's been a part of since day one. But truthfully, I don't think he wants to be part of this nation anymore. But when war calls and there's a battle, Jack can't help himself but be part of anything. He's potentially one of the best PvPers on the server here. And there's no one else I'd rather have my back during this series. We started heading into Stormslanding, and things have changed since I've last been here. It's nice to see this place coming alive again. But I didn't have time to soak in the town, because there was a war brewing and it was day 304. And in the book it told us that on day 305, the battle begins. Now, when we declare wars on a server, there are rules. Both parties need to be somewhat aware for the battle that is about to come. But this war was quite easy, because both Wilbo and our nation don't get along, for obvious reasons. Both nations want to drive us out. I just don't think Wilbo knows how strong of a nation we have become. And we have a lot of members on today. A bridge has been prepared that will hopefully take us over to Wilbo's land, where we will hopefully take his nation with ease. And the main goal that we need to do is retrieve his weapon, called the Great Hammer. Soccer is our king, and he too should have a god weapon. But it's currently lost on the server. The past owners who controlled this land when they were driven out took the weapon with them. And there's a bounty for anyone who can find it. And I think Soccer also hopes from this war that maybe the weapon will be locked away in Wilbo's nation, that he'll find. The sun was rising, which means day 305 was about to begin. On day 305, anything happens. If Wilbo manages to drive us out of our land, he wins. If we manage to drive him out of his land, we win. It's that simple. I drew my sword. Soccer lined us all up for cool effects. And we headed into battle. Everything seemed quiet at first, and maybe they'd forgotten about the war. But it wasn't long until we started seeing fiery arrows coming from the sky. Let the battle begin. Two bridges were constructed on each side, and we had a plan to get across. By using block shifters, I started being pushed, and I attempted to charge across. But an arrow shot me down into the water, extinguishing the fire, at least. But unless they destroy the cobblestone right now, they will not be able to stop the horde, the army that is crossing into their border. And like every leader, Soccer jumped across first, and after that, with the momentum, everyone followed. We were now on their side of the bridge and we started pushing them back. They retreated and closed the gate, but it wasn't long until our catapults annihilated the gate. Pushing through the barrier, and now we were at the castle. This was their capital building, and it was also a very strategic position because it was in the center of the world. Who doesn't want to own the center of the world? They started firing catapults at us on the outside. We did our best to dodge it. I pushed closer to the gates because there was no point fighting on the outside. That's when I saw Wilbo up on the walls with the god weapon on his back. That's what we truly need, so that we can rightfully own this land. Without that, our claim to the land is false. TNT was placed down at the gate and we charged through. Another barrier destroyed. But before we could keep charging, we needed to clear them off the walls. We couldn't let any of their soldiers get in behind us. It could wreak havoc. I went up the left side of the ramparts to drive them back, while some went up the right and an army went through the middle of the town. We'd managed to push them back to the keep. And now it was time to drive them out of the keep and claim this land for ourselves. We clearly outnumbered them, and they were not prepared. For a moment, I almost felt bad for the enemy team, as they were running and cowering, trying to reach the ocean so they could get to safety. But our arrows were too strong, and the shore was filled with loot from the dead players that have tried to escape. But there's no mercy. They tried to take our home away from us, so now we take their home away from them, and we see how they feel about it. I had not Froggy in my sights. I was after him. And we weren't going to let him escape. The chase went on for a while, and Capo and Rengs were ordered to go back to the castle to scour it and search for anything worth of value, while me and Jack went to go hunt Froggy. But this time Froggy, he had a friend, Minato. It was a 2v2. We chased them all across the ocean until we lost orientation altogether. And all we were focused on was trying to kill one another. They would get out, we would fight. They'd get back in a boat, we'd chase them. They would fight us, then we'd get back in a boat. It went back and forth. And until Froggy made a fatal mistake and didn't see me coming. I destroyed his boat, and thankfully he didn't pick it up. He was now stranded, and both me and Jack were on him. Our mission was to take at least one of these guys out. And with Froggy stranded in the ocean, it didn't take him long. Until he died. But Froggy and Minato had called for backup. And backup had come for sure. Now we were the ones being hunted. At the time we didn't know how many. Or who they were exactly. We tried to turn back to the castle we had taken. But we couldn't get past them. We had to do our best to dodge and weave the arrows that were coming. And that's when I saw that we were being chased by Wilboat and the rest of his army that survived. The arrows kept coming, and we kept getting shot out of our boat. We just did our best to get back in. We knew this was a fight that we couldn't take. We were chased for so long we ended up in the jungle, back where our journey first started. And there was a whole army behind us, chasing us now. We attempted to hide behind a tree, in hopes that they would just run right past us. But that didn't work. I tried to fight, but there was too many. Jack and I had two goals. That was to survive and not to lead Wilboat and his army back to Forest's peaceful jungle. We decided to cross the border into another nation's land that lives in the jungle. This nation over here weren't peaceful, and they were quite aggressive towards Forest's team. So we didn't mind doing this. But Jack and I decided if we were going to do this, we weren't going to escape. So we needed to split up, so that we can potentially take one out at a time. I had two players on me at the time, Wilboat and Colt. Jack was currently fighting one by himself, by the ruins of the neighboring nation that I was just speaking about. They were building a temple here, but they luckily wasn't online at the time, because if they were, they would have definitely battled us as well. I came in just at the right time. We had managed to kill one of their members, and with this, Wilboat and Colt disappeared. His other members must have been lost in the forest somewhere. Splitting up was a good idea. This gave us a moment to grab his loot and to run. We didn't want to run straight back to Forest's land and risk them following us back. So we took refuge in a tree and we let things cool down. Then we slowly snuck back to the border of the jungle and we crossed into Forest's land with no one following us. I made sure of that, but we wanted to be extra safe. I knew of a hill near Forest's village where for a while we could relax and keep an eye out, because if Wilboat is following us, he'll come for us here, and that way we can lead them away again if so needs to be. I sat on the hill keeping a lookout while Jack was down by the watered border that naturally divided both territories of the jungle. But then Jack came up to give me the all clear, that no one had crossed and no one was around. Not that we could see anyway. So we decided to head back down into the jungle and head home. We snuck in and it was nice to see that things were untouched, that the jungle canopy had kept this place hidden. Forest had spent a long time working on this. Jack went home and I returned back to my house also, where my parrot was still sitting there, happy as everything. I still don't have a name for him, but I'm sure he'll get one eventually. I put all my loot that I got from this battle into a chest. All this stuff will come in quite handy for trading. And a day or so rolled by when I received a message from Forest on Discord saying I had mail in my mailbox. So I went home to go check it out. It was the mail that made this video what it is. A bounty hunter. The mail read, "Wanted, Wilboat. Reasons. We need his god weapon, the Great Hammer, in order to fully control our new land. We will reward those who find the weapon generously. Delivered to Stormslanding Castle." I knew it was real because it was signed by Soccer himself. That's something you can't fake. That's when I told Forrest about the whole drama just went on a few days ago and how we led Wilboat back here, but led them away hopefully. And since I had been so involved and knew where Wilboat's last whereabouts was, I decided I'd take this challenge on and try hunt down Wilboat and retrieve the weapon. But with this, I also wanted to ask Jack, because like I said, there's no one else I'd want by my side. And Wilboat is a tough opponent, especially with the players around him. And Jack then logged online, ready for another adventure. I took my armor back off the wall again. It was time to head out. Time to head across the jungle border and go back to the location that we last seen him. We crossed the border, but watching this in replay mod, I could see Forrest watching as we crossed. Maybe she's thinking this is the last time she'll ever see us. We were now technically in enemy territory, and we had to sneak through. I don't know what we were expecting, going back to the last place we've seen Wilboat. What is he going to be doing? Standing there just randomly? Hasn't moved for the past few days. Both Jack and I knew where he probably went, and that was to Emil's land and his nation, because he was a very close ally with Emil, and he did choose his side after all when he decided to battle against us for our home in the last 100 days. This nation and this part of the jungle, the players weren't online a lot, but when they were very hostile, and they would chase you down. Luckily, I've never had that experience, but Jack has. And to be honest, that's the reason why Jack stays in this jungle and lives with Forrest. He's protecting Forrest and the village. Because without them, they would probably try to invade that side and take it for their own as well. At last, we returned back to the location where we had last seen Wilboat and where we had killed one of his players. But looking around, I could see the iron and the diamonds still on the building. Wilboat definitely wasn't here, and he definitely didn't come back when he ran away. Jack and I believe he headed west, which if we're true, because west lies Emil's nation, his only ally that we're aware of. That would make the most sense of where he'd go. Jack and I trekked across the continent, sailing and marching over the hills, and finding unexplored lands, which were raw and filled with resources. When we arrived at the Tiger Forest, we knew we were now close to Emil's land, and by law of our nation, we couldn't enter it. See, Emil had retreated and had been quiet for the last while. Emil is an evil player on the server, and he has a god weapon that allows him to revive any dead players on the server. But it's not just like they can come back alive and just be fine about it and go about their day. These players have to serve Emil and have to do whatever he says. They're almost like zombies. So any player that has died on the server likely lies inside Emil's land. If not, they're dead inside the nether. This is when we came to the border of Emil's land. It was my first time being here, and instantly we could see activity right across the water. They were building huts, fortresses, I'm not sure. If Wilboat was in here, there's no way we're gonna find out. because there's no way we're going in there. Until Jack wanted to go in. Because it's true what he said. There's only one way of finding out. I insisted that we waited until Emil and a few of his members go offline. That way we can explore the land a bit more freely. But Jack wanted to go in now. So, we headed upstream to see if there was a safer place to cross. Somewhere where no enemy players are. We found a quiet place and Jack crossed. I would have entered too, but my armor was half destroyed and I wasn't ready for a fight. And also I think I value my life just that little bit more. Jack have entered into Emil's land, and through Discord I was able to keep communication with him, while I kept an eye out from across the border. I took my armor off, so that I wouldn't glow in the night, and I would be a lot hard to see. Emil's guards were just across the water. And when the sun was rising that day, it was perfect timing. Not for us. But Jack had been spotted. Not by the guards across the water, but inside the town area that he was sneaking into. And instantly, the guards across the water started moving. You could tell that they were all in a big Discord together and definitely communicating. Jack was trying to make his way back to the water. And the guards were trying to cut him off. That's when I fired across to distract the two guards that were going towards him. But at this moment in time, Jack is being chased by Emil and another player. I tried to use my bow on the guy that was in the water, but this bow is terrible at times. And it doesn't fire right, but it does a lot of damage. It's the only reason why I keep it. I stayed across the water, just trying to keep the attention on me. Waiting for Jack to jump in that water so he can swim across to safety. And here he came. So with that, I charged across the water myself to stop anyone trying to intercept him. I didn't want to fight here, I just wanted to escape the arrows. And to escape this chase. But the two guards across the water were following us now. We tried to hide, but hiding wasn't an option. So we decided to fight them. Jack took one on while I took another on, each carrying our own weight. But the player Jack was fighting was a new recruit, and he burnt to a crisp and died, while I was still fighting my player, who awkwardly put down water, making the fight harder than it already was. That's when Jed's best made a run for the boat, and I attempted to try to destroy it, but I couldn't. I don't even know why that player is running. They've already chosen Emil's side. If they die, they can just be respawned and fight again. When Emil watches this video, he's probably going to kill him himself. But the player ran, and Jack and I tried searching for him. But he had disappeared, probably returning home. But during all this chaos, I had received a Discord message from Forrest, informing me that she had been raided by Wilboat and his crew, and that Wilboat was here. With this information, we sailed home as quick as we could. We were now in a Discord call with Forrest at the time, and she informed us that she did get jumped, and that she ran. And she has 2 members ready to log online, but she's told them not to. They're not that well geared to fight. We got close to the village and we decided that we'd climb a tree to get a better vantage point. The raid had taken place a while ago. We were a little too late to protect the stuff that was already there. It's gone now. As we climbed the tree, I took off my armor so that we wouldn't glow and we'd be more hidden. Forrest had the same idea and was across the water on another tree, keeping a lookout. She said she hadn't seen Wilboat for a while. But this is where things get interesting. And I would love to know if we've been followed or not. Because what's about to happen truly surprised me how we did not see this coming.
Put your armor on!
Behind you.
Put your armor on!
I luckily managed to put on my armor just before the first strike came into my back. But Wilboat And now the people we were fighting over by Emil's land are now here. And it's almost like they expected us, but did Emil's team follow us home? How did they find us in the trees like that? I don't know, and I still have no answer to this day. But it didn't matter. Wilboat was here, and a lot of the stuff from the village was raiding. If I pause right here, you can see that Wilboat is holding a totem of undying. That is my totem. He stole it from my house. When I jumped into the water, I told Forrest to run. She holds something very valuable, and I don't want her dying. Wilboat now seems to be here with his members and also a mix of Emil members. By going into Emil's land, we've just awakened a bigger enemy. But I've noticed there's one thing missing from Wilboat. He doesn't seem to have the weapon on him. Not on his back anyway. And I'm not sure if it's in his inventory. Since Wilboat has now raided the village, he probably knows that he's wanted. And he probably knows that he's wanted for his weapon. So potentially, he may have hid it. Or given it to Emil and his team to then take back to their land. But when I got to my base, I could see a lot of my stuff was taken. All my golden apples and my totem of undying. Which now Wilboat holds. Making him even stronger. From what I'm aware, that's nearly the only totem of undying on the server. A few hundred days ago, we were able to explore outside the world. And there we could find natural structures like golden apples and totems. And I think I had the only one. But now he has it. I hid my bird in the forest, so it's not in my house. I was surprised that it wasn't dead. But maybe Wilboat isn't that evil. But I don't trust him. My parrot is my only companion in this series, and I want to look after him. Jack is bravely kiting a few enemies around the village, because I need to repair my god set as it's going low. But luckily my god set has mending on me, and there are plenty of animals to slay. All these animals have allowed me to repair my god set to a nice healthy amount. While Jack is kiting, I take this opportunity to take whatever was left and to take it out of here so I can hide it. After all, this is the only stuff I have. And I wanted to get my parrot to true safety. So I ran through the village and started heading up to the volcano, where originally Forrest found the god weapon, lying in the middle a few hundred days ago. But I didn't realize that I was being followed, and an enemy was following suit. I knew I couldn't fight right now because I had my parrot, and my priority was getting him to safety. And trying to take him to safety, I've just got him into danger. I made him sit down on a tree and I ran. Luckily the enemy did not notice, and he was focused on me. I decided to engage the fight, knocking him off the tree, giving me time to run away. I do want to fight, but my main priority is linking back up with Jack. But before I can do that, I need to hide the stuff that I have in my inventory. I found a place just right next to a tree where I could dump all the stuff that I had. Looking at it now, I don't have a lot. But you don't need a lot when it's hardcore. You just need what you have in your inventory. But it was perfect timing. Just as I ran away, the enemy was still pursuing me. This was definitely one of Emil's gang, and not Wilboat's. With my items safely tucked away, it was now time to fight. And both of us were in well enchanted gear. And there was a hill, and we were about to play King of the Hill. My goal was to try and knock him down, so that he could take fall damage and die that way. After all, I did have a big sword and it did have knockback 2 on it. Deadly when you're up somewhere high. But fortunately, the gear that the enemy was wearing went in my favor with this fight. And as he hit me, his god set activated, Rampage, which gives him strength 3 but puts him down to 3 hearts. And that's how he fell to his death so soon. It wasn't even a far fall, but his enchants had ended up killing him. I took his loot and I ran as quick as I could. The goal was to all meet up, myself, Forrest, and Jack. We decided we'd meet at the volcano. Jack was already there. It was now Forrest who needed to make her way back. She had ran a very far way away. It wasn't until that night that she made it to here. Alive, but just about. She had been chased heavily. We all grouped up and we went back into the town. Now, fortunately that I managed to kill one of the enemy players, we now had their gear. And now we were able to get one of Forrest's team to come online and give them the gear that we had just got from the enemy player. We need everyone we can get here to fight. I gave her the gear except the chest plate, because that's what has reckless on it, which brings you down to 3 hearts but makes you do a lot of damage. But I think it just ends up killing you, especially to fall damage like he died. Now with us all armored up, it was now time to at least fight. At this point, Jack and I feel responsible for Wilboat doing what he just done, raiding Forrest's village. And we all believe now that Wilboat is using the thick jungle to hide, to conduct his business in a hidden fashion. He has all of the village's supplies, and Emil's army have came to aid him. At this point, the bounty hunter mission is over, and there's a personal bounty on Wilboat's head. We need to get revenge, and we need to get Forrest's items back. But first, we need to find where they're living. So naturally, we went to the place that started this fight, on top of the trees, when Wilboat and his gang jumped us. And in the night, we trekked across the treetops, searching for any signs of life. When we found a structure deep in the forest, and straight away, we could see that it was them. It was a mix between Wilboat's army and Emil's army. But we didn't have long to think, or even spy on them, because we had been spotted straight away, and arrows were already being exchanged. Fighting Wilboat's team is one thing, but fighting Emil is a hard one, and his gang, because they play very aggressive, because they know if they die they can come back alive, and still serve Emil. We all believed that Forrest's items were inside this compound, and we needed to try get them back. But there was a problem. There was 4 of us, and there was plenty of them. We were very outnumbered, and barely anyone was online on the server. So if we were gonna raid this, we were gonna have to be smart. So we regrouped, and we made a plan. Phoebes and Forrest needed to escape, and to loop around the compound, and be on the other side, while me and Jack hopefully distract, and then that might leave a window of opportunity for Phoebes and Forrest to enter the compound, and to attempt to get some of their loot back. They ran off, we climbed back up into the trees. We did our best to distract, and there I could see Wilboat again, inside the compound. But still, no god weapon to be seen. And here I had the player on the tree, who escaped from me a few nights ago, running away again. Things were going good. We thought we had most of their attention, but sadly they had already seen Forrest and Phoebes. So they were now looking for 4 people. So I think they kind of expected it. Because after a little bit of fighting, our best efforts to keep them distracted failed. And Phoebes and Forrest were caught, and they were now being chased. Knowing that I won't be able to catch up with Phoebes and Forrest as they run, it was up to them to survive. They knew this jungle better than anyone. I decided that I would attempt to push to the compound. See if I can get the loot myself. But the constant arrows were annoying and my shield was just after breaking. There wasn't much I could do. But me and Jack got Forrest into this mess. So I pushed on, pushing towards the gate. I knew that if I at least put pressure on the castle, the people pressuring Forrest as they run would return, knowing that I had breached. I blew open the gate and I stormed in. And it was right. Wilboat and the people chasing Forrest were home within seconds. Fighting is a tough one, because we're all in decent armor, and every hit gives you slowness and other bad effects. Jack and I are desperate just to get a kill, just to weaken their army by a fraction, because Emil isn't here, so he can't instant revive. It would at least delay them. But we were overrun, and we pearled out onto the treetops, and took a minute to get a breather. Phoebes and Forrest are safe now, and Jack's on the run. With Jack kiting the whole entire army again, I attempted to try again. To enter the castle. To see if I can retrieve some sort of loot. And to see if it's there. But when I got closer to the gate I had just blown up, it was already repaired. And I had to blow it up. But as I broke in, it was just cold here. And with no shields, his arrows were such a nuisance. But Jack was helping me out on the trees. I started having a look through the loot to see if there was anything, but this didn't look like their stuff. Not Forrest's stuff anyway. This looked like Wilboat's actual stuff. Or some of it. That's when I found TNT. And golden apples. I took them because I knew that that could be damage that they could do towards the village. And I legged it out of there, heading into the jungle. But with Wilboat's TNT in my inventory, he was right behind me. And he wasn't leaving me alone. I started giving Jack my information of where I was, so that he could meet me. We have Wilboat, and he's isolated. But we've got to catch 32 at the moment. Yes, Wilboat's wanted, and he's wanted dead or alive. But he's wanted for the weapon that he holds, which is the Great Hammer. But he does not appear to be using it, and he doesn't have it on his back. So either he's hid it, or he's given it to another enemy, like a mill. If we kill him, the information dies with him. Or worse, we kill him and a mill arises him from the dead and gives the weapon right to a mill. Jack finally came to my aid, and the first order of business was making Wilboat vulnerable. After all, he did have a totem of undying. There's no way he's going to give himself up when he knows he can't die yet. We needed to break that down. It almost looked like somebody out of a comedy scene. Jumping in and out of boats. At one point, Wilboat was even in my boat. But that's what we wanted. We wanted to drag him out to sea, so that he could be more isolated and pearls would have no effect. We knew what Wilboat was doing. He was definitely stalling for time and he was waiting for backup to come. And backup did arrive, and a fight broke out. Looking around now in the actual recording, I can see it's mostly made up of Emil and his members. Why are they here? Why are they helping him so much? They definitely want the weapon too. But Wilboat seems to have done a 200 IQ move and hid the weapon. Wilboat tried to jump in a boat, but I got in first, making him get in the back. He tried to bow me down, but I was just rowing him out to sea to try and isolate him a bit more from the group. After all, we're trying to break down that totem of undying. And I believe we've already been close to it. After a while, Wilboat got wise to what we were doing. But now it was just me and him having a fight. In the middle of the ocean. When checking my inventory, I could see that I was close to my armor breaking. And that armor is the only lifeline I have. I myself needed backup to take on Wilboat. So Jack started making his way out to me. But it came with a price. It also meant that the other enemies followed us. But we stayed on Wilboat, trying to break down that totem of undying. And after a long-winded fight of just focusing on Wilboat, we managed to break down the totem of undying. He was now vulnerable and he knew it, but my armor was also breaking, and it was breaking fast. We had Wilboat on the run, and he was swimming further and further out to sea, until he got his sense of direction back, and started heading back for land. He desperately wanted to get back to his stronghold, and we were desperately chasing him. But as we got to land, his goons started jumping us, giving him the window to escape. Jack managed to kill one of Wilboat's gang, giving us some armor and some much needed resources, like ender pearls, which at this moment in time only come from the taiga regions. Ender pearls are a very rare resource in our nation. Wilboat was gone, and he went back to the castle, we assume. Jack and I were heavily damaged, and without some needed rest, we wouldn't be able to fight another day. So we decided to call it there. We headed back into the village. It was a risk, but it's the only place I know where I can repair my armor. But the problem was the animals were dwindling. I already used them not long ago to repair the armor that I'm wearing already, but it's better than nothing. And it managed to get my armor to about half durability, which is much better than it was before. With the momentum, it was time to head back into the fight and head back over to the castle. Phoebes and Forrest, they had now gone into hiding. They don't have the gear like us to fight for too long. And also all their resources have mostly been lost because of the raid that Wilboat done on their land. We got to the trees near the fortress in the jungle. We were having a peep in. When through the tree line, we could see a name. It was Wilboat. And he was heading into the jungle. And by the looks of it, alone. We started running after him, but we quickly lost him. But we went in the rough direction he was going in. As it wasn't long until we spotted him again. He was inside what looks like to be another camp. This one really hidden inside the forest. But he was alone. And it seems like after the battle a lot of people are now offline again. One wrong move and if he sees us he'll summon everyone back online. I felt like a right stalker watching him through the trees. Jack and I at this time didn't really know what to do. We had an opportunity in front of us, but we were scared to take it. But we also had a dilemma. Like I said, he didn't have the weapon. And if we kill him, the weapon could be lost on the server. Now the rules do state if you want to hide a god weapon or anything of that sort, you can't just hide it simply underground. You must make something cool. You can try to hide it, but it must be some sort of structure or something. Something hidden. That way it makes it interesting for all parties on the server. But still, this world is big. You could be searching for a long time. So whatever we do here, we want to make sure that we make the right decision. And that we won't end up regretting it later. Killing is definitely the easiest option. But is it the right option? Jack had managed to find a security breach inside the camp. And he was able to hop right over the fence. So through Discord he taught me how to do it. And I jumped right over. We're now in the camp. And Wilboat didn't know. So we jumped into the Discord and ambushed him. It's die or come with us.
Why would I go with you?
It's die
You will die otherwise.
or come with us.
Good point.
Now, quickly, because we're going to kill you otherwise, because if you message them on Discord, I swear to God. If you message any of Mill's team or your team.
Alright.
Wilboat informed us that he had indeed hid the weapon. But it wasn't entirely because he was wanted. He was afraid of what Emil would now do that he's vulnerable. Because Emil only wants god weapons. He doesn't care about the actual people who hold them. So I said you can choose one side. You can choose the evil side who will kill you no matter what the second they hand over it. Or you can go with us. The people that will attempt to stick to their words. Wilboat handed himself over. And this is when we put another server rule on him. When we captured him, we put the server rule of he can't message anyone on Discord his chords, his location, or that he's being taken. That's for players to find out in-game. It makes it more of a challenge and not just like, hey, I'm here, come save me. It ruins the fun. I asked Wilboat where the weapon is, and he said he wouldn't tell me until his part of the deal is done. Wilboat wanted to be transported down to safety, down to Stormslanding, and imprisoned. He accepted that he needs to stay in prison until we actually find the weapon. And then once we find the weapon, and he's been true to his word, that he's let go. To be honest, I said, we won't kill you. That's the least I can say we can do right now. But he knew it's a better option than being stuck with Emil. Because eventually Emil will turn his back on him. And he will kill him the second he gives up that god weapon. So, with trust, we gave Wilboat his armor back. So if he gets jumped, he has some sort of protection. And we transported him down to Stormslanding. We knew that there was no one online in Stormslanding, so no one was able to hold him, so that he wouldn't escape. So I called down another nation, a good allies of ours, Missing Gnome, to come take him and take him to their kingdom. Well, they're hold in prison and keep an eye out. Wilboat told us that the god weapon was hidden on a jungle island off the west coast. It's the smallest island and it's right bang in the middle of it. It's a mossy cobblestone structure. There, you'll find the god weapon. This is when he also informed us the reason why Emil was not at the compound of the castle and why he was trying to escape was because Emil had decided to take his army and make them search the jungle to find the weapon. Emil essentially leaving Wilboat to die, thinking that we would just kill him. So for Wilboat, this was a holiday. Gnome and Wilboat went their way. We went back to the jungle territory. And we started searching all the islands, looking for the structure that he spoke about. When we found a small island off the coast to the west. And right in the middle, there was a mossy cobblestone structure. But when I got down here, the weapon was there. But I couldn't help but feel that the room was trapped. So I took it slow. I was afraid to take the weapon off the wall in case it triggers something. So I mined the floor, making sure there was no traps or no holes. And it was all clear. We had managed to pick up the hammer, and it was now in our inventory. We had managed to acquire the bounty, and Jack and I started transporting it home. But this journey came with a price, an expensive one at that. And now Forrest's nation is overrun with Emil and his team. So I'm going to command Soccer as payment to drive Emil out of Forrest's jungle and bring peace back to this lovely nation. Our 100 days journey begins. Returning home to Stormslanding, the place where I live and my nation that I'm a part of. We are returning home with a massive bounty that our leader wanted. And we managed to get it. Because in the last 100 days, we were up north in the jungles hunting down a player who goes by the name of Wilbo. It's a long story, but basically we took his land off him, but he managed to run away with the god weapon that is the land claim to that land. And we needed that to be the legitimate owners. He went on the run and we hunted him down. But it came with a price. Up north is a lovely jungle, and the leader of that jungle is Forrest. And with Wilbo and all the attention in that region, it brought many players. And players that are the bad kind. It brought Emil's team. Emil is a very, very evil player on the server, and has barely any respect for others. And now he's in this land, destroying the natural beauty, while Forrest and the rest are in hiding. So with the reward for my bounty, I'm going to request that Soccer, our leader, goes up north with us with an army, and we drive Emil out, restoring Forrest's land back to peace. Returning home to Stormslanding, I could see that the town was bustling, and there were a load more builds and a bunch more players. There had been a mass recruitment wave on the server, and we had a load more players playing, and it felt more lively, and it was brilliant. And it was great to see that our nation was flourishing. Soccer met us in the town hall, where we exchanged a weapon, and we told him what we wanted him to do with it. He agreed, but there was a slight problem. The Nether was opening, and he was sending his army and himself down south to the Badlands, where he and his team can enter the Nether. JCO had invited every nation down. Apparently there was some book left by the admins, which we'll find out soon. So we struck a deal that he would go up north and drive Emil's players out and return all of the raided loot from Forrest's village back to them, while I and Jack went down south to the Nether and represented our nation in the Nether expedition. That was the deal. But we did need to take some players with us. JCO did inform every nation that once this Nether expedition starts, we'll be locked in the Nether until a certain objective is completed, which he said he'll share more down at the portal. Soccer lined up all the new players, and 2 people volunteered. They would come into Nether with us. We'd be a 4-man group, and would hopefully be able to hold our own. And the event is taking place in a few days. And now it's time to fill this ship right here with supplies. Because once we're locked in the Nether, we're not going to have access to any water. And we have a hydration mod on. If we don't bring enough water and supplies, we die. So over the next few days, the team got filling the ship with supplies to last us a lifetime. All the water buckets we'll need, cobblestone for building our base inside the Nether, everything we could ask for. And you might be wondering, how is this ship right here going to move? Well, it's going to be moved by an admin team. Sadly, we can't sail them. Ships are becoming a massive part of the server. They're basically floating hubs, fortresses, whatever you want them to be. And a lot of nations are now building. The ship was filled, and it was then taken. It was now time for me to head down to the south and meet our ship there. After a while of travel, we reached the south, and for the first time we're seeing the Badlands. The only nation of its kind that has no rules, no law, no king. Mostly just bandits, people for hire. That's all we've heard about them. Everything really is a mystery about them. We climbed up onto the docks and we instructed the admins of where we wanted our ship to be plopped down. It was fascinating seeing all the other nations coming together. Everyone was in their own expedition groups, all representing their own nations. With the ship now safely docked and everyone here, we decided to explore a little bit. See who's here and not here. All the ships I didn't really recognize. I could only see who they were by skins. And this ship I could definitely tell was Gnome's team. It puts our boat to shame. Walking up the stairs revealed a lost friend, Mikey, who had really came to our aid a few hundred days ago in the Great War against the Mill. in taking back our town. I jumped into a Discord call with them and we had a chat. Just chatting up and catching up on things. They didn't have a boat. They live close, so they brought their donkeys across. The donkeys are carrying all the supplies they'll need. I just hope it's enough for them. As I was chatting to Mikey's team, Gnome came off the ship, heading into town. And there's nothing really strange about this, except Wilbo is with him, in armor, like nothing happened. Now, Soccer did inform me that Soccer wanted to bring Wilbo back to our land, where he can be imprisoned and maybe trialed. But relationships between Gnome and Soccer aren't at their best. And Gnome has his own ambitions for the server now. He has his own nation after all. And Gnome requested that he wanted a part of Wilboat's land so he could build an extra naval base over there for when the End opens up, so he can have closer access to the End Isles. Soccer refused, and with that, Wilboat was never handed over. And now it looks like Wilboat has joined Gnome's team? I'm unsure. JCO's team informed us that there's a railcart system that took us all the way to the town. So we went back to the boat to craft some minecarts quickly, so we could swiftly head into town, so we don't miss the main meeting. The games are about to begin soon. For a land with no rules and no real king, the infrastructure is impressive. Every bandit that lives in this land, alongside with JCO, seem to have mutual respect for each other. But how will they deal with outsiders coming in? Only time will tell. We made it to the end of the tracks. Meanwhile, back in Stormslanding, Soccer is finally getting his team prepared. The ship is filled and he's waiting for the admin team to move his ship up north so that he can fulfill his side of the bargain and free Forest's land. They'll be landing up there very shortly. And here was the infamous Bandit Town that JCO and a few at the start of the server built. And ever since then, it's kind of been where, if you don't have a nation or a home, it's where you go. It's home for people that can't follow rules. And this is maybe where MB might be hiding out. And it was fascinating seeing the locals watch these flood of foreign players enter their land. One even standing outside the bank because they just don't trust them. I decided to climb the west hill of the town to see if I could get a glimpse of the nether portal. And from the distance I could see it. Finally, the person that we've all been waiting for. The person, the player, that invited us, JCO, finally came around. And he decided to lead us to the portal, where hopefully we can get things started. He had a book that was left by the admins. With that held the instructions of how they wanted it to be played and how it can all be fair. This was a massive server-wide event. And as much as the admins are annoying, and to be honest, they've been quite absent, they do try to make things interesting. And a server that was very well divided, we were all now together, and we weren't fighting each other. I suppose if it comes to it, it can happen in the nether. Or we can work together, we'll have to see. But in the center, I could see the new knife. The new god weapon. The soul knife. That's what we're all here for. It allows you to open and close the nether when you wish. It's essentially a key, and there's other powers that come with it. You'll just have to wait and see. And just as we were all lining up and JC was getting ready to read the book, it wouldn't be a mill without making a fashionable entrance. He had brought a lot of players with him, some that I recognized that were up north. With everyone now here, JCO got reading the book. The book explained that the Nether Portal was built by the admin team, and this, by server rules, is the only Nether Portal that is allowed to be constructed and used, and that this Nether Portal can be opened and closed using the soul knife that is in the frame right behind JCO. So essentially whoever owns this knife owns the Nether, can open and close it when they wish. This book also explained about the netherite situation, and it told us that there is only one smithing table on the server, and that is hidden and still hasn't been found yet. The admins also explained about an event that'll be happening in the nether for a trinket that is one of a kind called the Hades crystal that will give the user permanent fire resistance, which, to be honest, in a world where potions are not easily crafted, and won't be because there's only one brewing stand on the server altogether that also hasn't been found. Permanent fire resistance sounds pretty nice, and that event will be coming. But the book told us to activate the portal and to throw the soul knife through and to wait for the blue flames. Right now, the admin team are taking the weapon on the other side, and they're going to hide the weapon. When the blue flames light, the nether is opened, but it's opened only for a day. And after that day, the nether is then locked until the soul knife is found. So whoever enters isn't getting out until the job is done. So as the leaders talked, the rest of the groups were sent back to the ships to bring all the supplies here, so that when the portal opens, all supplies will be moved in swiftly. Right now, everyone is being civilized, and players that didn't get along are cooperating. But let's just see how this is all fair when we're all stuck in the nether. At this point, I still don't know who's actually entering. If Emil's going in, this is going to get interesting. Might give us the perfect opportunity just to take him out altogether, but that's risky too. We risk wasting a lot of supplies and never getting out.
Soccer's boat has finally landed, and they're quietly making their way to the last known position that I saw him at. I said in the middle of the forest there should be a fortress. There, that's probably where their hub is, where they lie, their operation base. With this info, Soccer's taking it slowly. He has the element of surprise. He gets closer and closer to the base, until he can finally see that there's no one here, and it looks kind of abandoned. But inside the abandoned fortress, there was still a pile of Forrest's loot. All the stuff that was raided from our village, a lot of it was here. Some of it was definitely taken, but a good portion of it was here. Watching the replay back, I see that he took the stuff, but he didn't take it back to Forrest's land. He took it onto his ship. This wasn't part of the deal.
Our supplies were in place, and all we had to do now was play the waiting game. The admins were sure taking their time to hide this weapon. A screech came from a random player on the Discord, who was first to see the blue flames light up. And with that, everybody charged into the new frontier, all after the same thing. We had one night to move all supplies in, and every nation needed to cooperate. That day was the busiest day on the server. Everybody going in and out of the portal. Mikey's team kinda had it right. They were just able to take their donkeys into the nether. Let's just hope that they don't burn to a crisp. The sun was setting on the last day, and I was taking my last moments to look on the outside, in case I don't make it, and just for effect. And this could be the last time I ever see the outside. With the portal closing, I entered the nether, and people who weren't coming left. Not everybody here was staying inside. They were just here to help move supplies in so that everything got in. And just like that, we were now locked inside. And reality started to sink in quick. There is no way this is going to stay civil, but we just gotta keep our eyes open. We took what supplies we could carry, and we will be back. But we started heading in the direction that the admin book told us, where the event zone will be, where we all agreed we would settle and live around this area. But the terrain was harsh, and there wasn't just a guided path for us to follow. We had to make our own way. Some players weren't used to the environment at all, falling into lava. After a while of crossing the dangerous terrain, we spotted the center that the book was going on about. This was where we were meant to settle. It wasn't far at all. It's just that the terrain that we had to follow to get back and forth made it treacherous. This is the center where all the games or the events will be played from. So, over the next few days, every nation started bringing their supplies to the settlement zone, and every nation started building their new temporary home. But the nether was too much for some players, and some people burnt to death, while other players couldn't handle the heights. Our team found a place to settle, and we had successfully managed to move over all our supplies without any casualties. We decided to use the natural basalt that was in the area to make a small fortress and home. And where credit is due, I must say that the team went above and beyond, and they built an amazing structure. I had planned just to build a temporary little base, but these guys had made it home, and so had everyone else. These builds took a few days to do, if not longer. And across the way, we have a joint base between Sorrow and Mikey's team. That's a mighty fortress, and in the distance lie hidden team bases, ones that don't want to be fully seen, wherever they lie. But before everyone could hunt for the soul knife, one event had to happen, and that was the fight for the Hades crystal, which we were informed will be a fight to the death, with each nation putting a player forward to represent them if they so wish to fight for this weapon. Now Jack and I, we wanted to fight, because we both don't own a unique weapon ourselves. We don't own any god weapons. We own nothing unique. And both of us want to have something that we can share. And with Jack being one of the best fighters on the server, he felt confident. And he stepped forward that he'll fight for us. We just now need to find out how many other teams are stepping forward. And this will be awkward, because allies will be potentially fighting other allies. But you have to put those aside. This needs to be kept personal. There's nothing personal about it. We're all just after an item. Nearly every nation stepped forward and wanted to fight. Grim, the new leader now of Lofi's land, was putting a player forward, and Herb and Wilbo had also stepped forward. And it almost seemed like Wilbo was now in control of their team. Something felt very odd about that group. After a while of chatting among everyone, players started to slowly step back. Wilbo and Herb's team, Gnome's expedition, stepped down. They weren't fighting. Then Jacio stepped down. They didn't want to fight. And Flying Boy, who was adamant on wanting to fight, he's part of a Mills team, also stepped down. So this left Jack, Rainy Evening, who's part of Mikey's team, and Grim's team fighting. Now, through the power of replay mod, we switch to Jack's perspective. All three players are now ready to enter the arena, and they enter one by one, until it was just Jack left. It was now his turn to enter the arena. This event was hosted by the admins of the server, and the arena was epic in scale. The rules were incredibly simple. 3 people have stepped into the arena: Jack, Rainy Evening, and Little JMC. Only one will be coming out of here alive, and the winner will get the reward of the Hades crystal, which gives you permanent fire resistance forever. And overwatching this will be the admin, ready to give the reward for the last surviving player. The fight started out with a bunch of arrows being exchanged back and forth, until it was time to get more intimate and to use axes and swords. Watching this back, I could see that Little JMC had a tactic, and that was to let the other enemies fight and let them deplete all their resources. But Jack picked this up pretty quickly, and if anything, it made Little JMC an even bigger target. And sadly, Little JMC did not stand a chance. He was fighting for mere seconds before he collapsed to the floor and died. Now, it's just Rainy Evening and Jack. This is going to be a long battle. Meanwhile, back to me. We had a situation developing. There's a takeover happening. With the arena fight taking place, some teams are trying to take advantage of this, and there's a poorly timed attack on Sorrow and Mikey's base. Looking down, I can see that this is a mixture and a gang of teams. I shot back naturally because Mikey and Sorrow are good friends, allies. But instantly, this was a mistake. Because whatever anger they now have, it's diverted onto us. And I have 2 fresh recruits that I said I wanted to keep safe. And they were now coming towards us. Players got closer. I could see that it wasn't just a Mills team. Gnome's expedition, which seems to be led by Wilbo, was moving in us too. There was also Jacio and his bandits, and Grim and his team. This was planned. This is why they all suddenly stepped down from the fight, because they knew that every team would most likely be vulnerable if they didn't send any players in. They started now coming for our castle. There were a lot of them, and things just didn't feel right. It felt like the enemy team approaching had no plan, except just to try and cause destruction. We barricaded both the doors so that if they want to get in, they're going to have to use TNT or try and stack on up. Without Jack here, I wasn't really sure on what we should do. The 2 guys were geared on our team for sure, but they were new recruits, and their gear wasn't as good as mine. And besides, it didn't matter. We were heavily outnumbered. We had spent about 20 days so far in the Nether, and everything had been civilized, just building away at our bases and getting along. I suppose that's what makes this a bit more of a shock. It seemed the enemy team had no plan. They weren't trying to get in our base. They were just doing the poorly unplanned fight that they did at Mikey and Sorrow's fortress. Just firing arrows up on top of us. It's like they were almost just trying to poach us, siege us, which they got their way. Because an arrow hit me wrongly, and I went off the side. And I started to run. But with this, my 2 recruits started to run with me. I wanted them to stay in the castle. They're much safer there, and they don't seem to be interested in coming inside yet. This put me in a bit of bother. Not only did I have to worry about myself, I now had to worry about 2 others. Who I kept instructing to run and not look back. They aren't geared as me, and I can take them on as best I can. With them, they'll burn to a crisp. At least I have 2 god apples at the moment. I want to try and conserve them. But in the chaos, I had lost Spiny. He had ran his own way and was gone. And now, I was cornered, and I was forced to eat a golden apple or burn to a crisp. I stayed under the lava, but I knew I needed to get back out there and go find my teammates. While I'm taking refuge underneath the lava, we cut back to Jack and what's going on with him. And still, he's in a massive fight with Rainy Evening. These are 2 players that have been playing since the start of the server, both well geared and a lot of survivability. This mainly comes down to skill, and in the end, skill did win. And that was Jack, upholding his reputation as one of the best PvPers on the server. He has won the event, and the reward is now his. But he must leave the Nether and regroup with us, because from the chat, he can see what's going on. Jack had won, and he was out of the event. He had managed to find Sicko and meet up with me. They were on top of the fortress. But the problem was Spiny was in trouble, and Jack and Sicko lingered too long on top of the Nether, and Wilboat came charging to get them. Sicko bravely fought with Jack, but that wasn't what we needed. We needed him to get away and get somewhere safe, because if anything, he was a liability at the moment. He jumped off with no fire resistance. But luckily, he had pearls that took him to safety. He was free and safe, and we informed him to stay there and to hide for a second, because Spiny was in deep trouble, and I was doing my best to slush through the lava and to escape as quick as I could. I was running to Spiny. He was in deep trouble. But as you know, when you're in PvP and you're near death, it gets really hard to call out where your position is. And with that, Spiny was murdered by Wilboat. And that was his life over. The end of the road for him. It was now even more important that we protect Sicko and we take him out of here. Because this is a server that everybody enjoys, and nobody wants to die, because it's such a fun and unique experience. But at the end of the day, Spiny did offer it and put himself forward to come on this adventure. He knew what he was getting himself into. I just wanted to make sure that we kept him alive. Jack and I were back on the fortress. Sicko was off in the distance, where I told him to stay. The Nether was under attack, and the treaty that we all made as players and nations to try and keep this part of the game civil was not working out. We all agreed we'd cooperate, and we'd find the soul knife together, even though that's counterintuitive. But then once we found it, we would then try and figure out who gets this weapon. Or maybe it's a weapon for all. But nothing like that can really happen in the server. Of course, drama has to go down, but without drama, we wouldn't have a show. The only thing I'm shocked about is, why is Gnome's Nation working with Wilboat? Gnome isn't in the Nether himself. Does he know this is going on? Have some of his players went rogue with Wilboat? Has Wilboat corrupted his players? But we can't think about that right now. We're in the Nether. We're locked inside the nether. We don't know how long we are going to be inside here. When the soul knife is found, we can get out, hopefully. But we don't know when that's going to happen. And we have a mod in the server that makes you have to drink water. And water is the most vital part of survival in the nether, alongside with food. But mainly water, because that's something you can't find here. So we need to try see if we can sneak back into our fort and take as much water as we can. As we were making our way to the fort, Jack threw out the Hades crystal and gave it to me. I don't know why, but that's just how Jack is. But in a moment like this, you don't really have time to think or say you should have it. Just put it on and get on with it. Jack also threw me something very interesting, which was a complete secret and no one knew we were going to get. But he had a recall potion, a one-of-a-kind item. You drink this and you go back to your bed. It's literally a ticket out of the nether, but it only works for one player, whoever drinks it. We started getting closer. Things had cooled down, and it's maybe been about half an hour since the original attack. We started making our way closer to our fort, our home. We no longer wanted to live here. It wasn't going to work. But what we did want is our supplies. But Wilbot was there. I crouched. But the glow of my armor, he'd seen it. And we had a short period where Wilbot was on his own. So we wanted to make this count. I wanted to take out my great sword, but my keybound was being slow. But I did. With this weapon, I could hopefully knock him off the side. He could take fall damage and he would die. But the slowness effect was causing issues, making it harder to get a hit on him. But he got close to the edge. And with that, I was able to knock him off. But it wasn't enough fall damage. I could see some of Wilbot's team in the center. So Jack and I didn't want to go down. But Jack had no choice, because Herb came up behind him and knocked him down. Jack needed to get back up to me. At this point, I was trying to conserve my golden apple. It was my last one, and these things are incredibly rare. The golden apples are going down in supply since the world had been locked in with a world border a few hundred days ago. Jack managed to make it back up to me, and we had to get out of here. I couldn't help but feel that history was almost repeating itself, and we were heading right back down the same path, with Wilbot chasing us with his view. But as I started to get my sense of direction, I could see that it was only Wilbot and Herb chasing us. We might be able to take him on here. So we fought in the Nether Fortress corridors. Wilbot got knocked off the side. And hopefully into lava. Now it was just Herb on us. We were trying to keep moving, because we were afraid that Wilbot was summoning the rest of them. I'm sure they were on the way. But we had managed to accidentally wind up back in the area that's a dead end. While fighting, we weren't really looking where we were going. Jack couldn't go into that lava. He had no golden apples to save him. He tried to stack out, but it didn't work. He desperately jumped into the lava, and knowing his odds, he knew what he had to do. He drank the recall potion. I don't hate him for that. I understand. I spent a while underneath the lava crouched, trying to buy myself as much time as I could. If only Jack didn't throw me the Hades crystal, we both could have fell into the lava and would have been still here. I still had a god apple, and I could have used it then. But no point staying in the past. I finally came to the surface to take a look and see was anyone still here. And they had gone back. I dragged myself out of the lava lake. There was still lots of responsibility. I had Sicko to look after, and now finding the soul knife had even more reason. I was just praying that maybe Mikey or Sorrow's team, if they aren't dead yet, which I didn't notice them dying in chat, would find it, and that it wouldn't be Wilbot's team. I found Sicko's blocks that he placed, and I knew that he was close. I asked him to stand on top of a red tree so that I can spot him, and it wasn't long until I found him. Sicko and I had to do a bit of damage control. I wanted to see how much water and how much supplies we had between us, so that we can try preserve as much supplies as we could, and to share it out equally. Worst case scenario is we'll run out of water, and then we'll be forced to stay offline so that we don't die until the weapon is actually found. But that would be boring and not fun, and it's not something I want to do. When I get into these 100 days, I like to immerse myself in the story. But from doing this, we didn't have much supplies at all, and Sicko had barely any water. I gave him some of mine, but not all of my flasks were full. My main priority right now was looking after Sicko and finding the soul knife, and hopefully meeting up with Mikey and Sorrow's team, who had also been driven out of their fortress, I assume. And yes, I could message them on Discord and find out their location, but I like to immerse myself and find out things in-game. Make this a fun survival challenge. Sicko and I started to head back to spawn, but not just like we did with Jack there 5 minutes ago. We were getting into the ceiling so that we could take a look. I wanted to see, was Sorrow's team and Mikey's team still in the fortress? Maybe they were still fighting, and that's why Wilboat kept running back. I could see players in the distance, and I could tell that they weren't on our side. But looking at Mikey's fortress, I could see that there was no signs of life. I was hoping in my head that they would still be fighting, and maybe me and Sicko could go and group up with them. But that wasn't an option. I thought maybe we could go to our base. Maybe jump down from the ceiling quickly, or maybe myself. Grab some supplies and run. But as I got closer, slowly going through the ceiling of the nether, Wilboat and Grim were inside there, taking all the supplies, I assume. As much as I didn't like what they did at the time, I must admit it was very smart. They were clearly driving everyone out, taking all the supplies, so that maybe they wouldn't even have to kill us. We'd just die from thirst, or hunger, or just the harsh environment of the nether. So now, going back to the base wasn't an option. It was a waste of time, and there's probably no supplies there. I needed time to think, and to maybe come up with some sort of plan. So with that, we found a cozy corner in the nether, and I instructed Sicko to log offline. And I'm gonna log offline. And hopefully when I come back, we'll come back with a plan. After Soccer treated himself to all of Forrest's stuff and loaded it onto the ship, he's now back in the jungle. And here he's at Forrest's village finally. He's hunting for a Mills team. Everything does seem very quiet. But watching this back, I can't help but feel finding a Mills team was almost secondary. He had taken Forrest's stuff and left it behind. But it wasn't long in the village when he spotted an enemy. Multiple enemies. But they all spotted each other. Soccer's team slowly started moving in on them. But what he didn't know, and I didn't know at the time, was that Soccer was moving in on a Mills team. But what I didn't know, that mostly all the players that were up north in the jungle that were on a Mills team, they were all new recruits. All just following orders from a mill, so they don't get kicked from the server. Soccer launched a strike against the Mills members, who were desperately trying to get the high ground. You can tell they weren't ready to fight, and this strike was brutal. And Soccer murdered everyone, except one who was on the run. He ran back to the only safety he knew, and that was his camp. This is where they've been living this whole time, where they've been hoarding all the resources they've been gathering from Forrest's land. But when he got here, it wasn't long before Soccer and a few others were on his tail. And now his safety was no longer safe. And it wasn't long until he was just another dead player. All those fresh recruits now dead. It's just making a Mills undead army even bigger. These players could have been captured and recruited, not slaughtered. The next day I logged on alone, and to be quite frank, I had no ideas, except one brainwave that came to me. And that's in regards to keeping Sicko alive and making sure that at least if I die, maybe he can still continue his journey. I know this sounds weird, but I wanted Sicko to join Wilboat and his group. Now, I say Wilboat as if it's his group. I'm not sure. I think it's a collective of all the trusted leaders working together. But Wilboat just feels like my natural enemy at the moment. But I wanted Sicko to join Wilboat. And I knew he wouldn't be able to just walk up and join them. They'd kill him on sight. You know, they'd think he's a spy, or just kill him for no reason because he offers nothing. So I knew what I had to do. I placed down a chest, and I put my great sword inside it, the Thalia's sword, which is a very rare sword in the server, and I still don't know the origins of the sword. It was given to me by Jamie, and I've had it ever since. But I knew Sicko logged off here, and I knew he'd find it, so I told Sicko to take this and bring it to the group in the middle. Say you stole it from me. And you want to join them. Now I felt there was a bit of a weight lifted off my shoulders. And I only had myself to care about. I knew that Wilboat would definitely take him in if he had that weapon, but if he didn't, at least I tried my best. I now had one goal, and that was do my best to search for the soul knife, and to maybe see if I can find Mikey or Sorrow's team. In my head, I knew that the soul knife had to be close to the spawn area. I knew that they wouldn't hide the soul knife 10,000 blocks away. It'll never be found. It had to be somewhere around here, hidden. I started searching inside the Nether fortresses and just having a look around. And to be honest, a huge portion of this video is cut down because I found nothing worth of value. It's just endless searching. Until there was an announcement in Discord that the soul knife weapon had been found. With that, I was back in the center, but I was in my roof area that I dug out with Sicko quite a few days ago now. I knew that with this announcement, everybody would be heading to the portal to get out, and that Wilboat and his crew would most likely kill anyone they could see. So I started digging my way back there through the roof. I was just under the treacherous path that we took when we first entered the Nether. But as I was digging free, I noticed a bunch of names down below. An army of names heading towards the center, going back on themselves. But looking closer, I saw that it was Soccer's team. The Nether portal had to have been definitely opened now, because they were here. But I was so disconnected from them and I couldn't get down to them. And like I said, I like to try and immerse myself in the story. I didn't want to join their Discord and ruin it. I wanted to try and make my way down to them. And when closer, joined their Discord. Started continuing my digging, trying to get to the portal, hoping that I could meet up with them. Jack must have went home and got help. I managed to find a place where I can safely jump down to. And I managed to get back onto the path. The portal was just in sight. And without thinking, I naturally started gravitating towards the portal instead of going to Soccer and his crew and his army. I wanted to get out, but I noticed someone else trying to get out. I didn't know if it was a hostile or an ally. But as I got closer, I could see the dead skin. It was a dead soul, part of a Mills nation. The portal was opened, but I had a chance to take this soul out. And it was too tempting. I was hoping for a cheap kill. Knock him off the side, take fall damage and die. I wouldn't have to exert a lot of energy then. But he was on the run, and to go across that terrain I could easily get lost. And whoever owns the soul knife right now could lock the portal on us and trap us inside. But with that, Wilboat came running up the road, and we engaged in a fight. But in a weird way I took a pause, and I saw the sword, and I knew that Sicko had done what I asked. I hope he was still alive. I can now see the immense damage that sword does do. I'm not sure if Wilboat was running from the fight, but it looked like before he met me, he was scouring to get to the portal. But he couldn't resist fighting me. But I could see in the distance that Pet Moose was coming back to jump me now. The table had turned pretty quick, and I was under severe threat. And running wasn't really an option. When every hit you take, you get frozen in place nearly. I had to fight no matter what. Wilboat, I believed, was the head of this operation. Taking him out is the answer. But taking out the rest of the players is just slaughter. They could be innocent. They could have been forced to do this. The only other players I love to kill are a Mills team, because they're dead and have no option but to fight for a mill. Sicko came running up the road as well, and I felt almost betrayed, but I understood. He started hitting me. I think he saw that I was outnumbered and thought I'm going to die anyway. So we knew to stay on Wilboat's side. Now there were more players here. I had to eat my last golden apple. They were all ganging up on me. But in the commotion, Wilboat died. He still had loads of survivability on him. I could see golden apples on the floor. I don't think he was watching his health, or that he had a god set that had reckless on it, which brings you down to 3 hearts but makes you do insane damage. But it just killed him. I tried to pick up my weapon too, but I'm not sure if I got it or not. But like how something of a movie scene, Soccer and his gang swept in to help me. And I joined their Discord. Soccer wanted to kill every single one of them, but I didn't. I just wanted to kill the trusted players. The people like JCO. The people who have a say in what actually happened. But Soccer wanted to kill them all. Even though a group of these players in the Nether a few days ago fought us and tried to kill us. I couldn't help but also feel from them. Killing them is taking away their experience. And they were just following someone after all. And taking the circumstances. They were trapped inside the Nether. It was survival. I did what I shouldn't have done. I struck Soccer, screaming to stop. But no one in the Discord was listening to me. It was filled with just screaming voices. And this is not what I stand for. These players aren't leaders. They were just following orders. And they were just on a team. They can change teams. They can be recruited again. What's the point of killing them? I didn't stand for what this nation was becoming. And I could see at this point that even though I had found the nation and I'd been part of it for so long, I could see that the nation had outgrown me. And the new recruits were different. And they were influenced by Soccer and what he wanted to do and what he wanted to achieve. And I'm not saying Soccer is evil. He's not. He came to help me. And I respect that. But I will not tolerate slaughtering groups of players. If we keep this up, we'll have no server left. The players are what fuel this rich and diverse series. Our journey begins outside of Mill's castle, and no, we're not heading straight into war because the war hasn't officially begun yet, but it will, because we're gonna make it happen. See, the server's split into 2 teams currently right now. 2 ideas. On one side, one team, which is the red team, want to keep control. They want the few to stay in control. Where on our side, the blue team, we want freedom. We want everyone to have a fighting chance to do what they want and not to be controlled. This is some new politics that's popped up on the server. And this was a deciding factor that we all knew war was coming. And you had to pick a side. Are you on the blue side or are you on the red side? And obviously, I'm on the blue side. But red team had invited us here to a Mill's castle. Not only had a Mill finished this huge castle finally, after many 100 days. And I think he wanted to show this off because Barry had done an amazing job at this. But red team were looking for something that everyone was looking for. The one thing that will change the tide of war. And red team were looking for the smithing table. This is used to make netherite, and there's only one of these in the world, and it's been placed down by the admins, and still no one has found it. Everyone believes that it's still hidden in the nether. And in the last 100 days, the nether finally was released to all of us. There's only one nether portal in the world, and there was a great nether game where all nations put forward players to enter the nether. And they were all competing amongst each other to find the soul knife. This was the god weapon that controlled the nether portal. It was essentially a key. If you own this weapon, you can open and close the only nether portal in the world. You literally own the nether. That means you own all the ancient debris, which means you can craft all the netherite you want. After many days of fighting for survival, the soul knife was finally found and the nether portal opened, but this erupted a huge war. All the brutal chaos that was going down in the nether was now spilling out into the overworld. I managed to barely escape with my life, but in the process I left my nation, Stormslanding, because they were one of the culprits who were causing this tension. They were slaughtering innocent people, which they didn't need to do. They were in the nether and trapped. But as I was getting far away from the scene as possible when the nether portal opened, I managed to find Mikey's team alongside with Sorrow, and they were the team that had found the soul knife. But obviously they were keeping it secret. But since I was nationless, Sorrow invited me in with open arms, and I joined them and helped them escort the soul knife back to Mikey's nation, where it should belong. But as we were trying to avoid the chaos that was on the shore, there was just brutality everywhere. Nations that were once great allies were now fighting each other because accidental deaths had happened, where Soccer had accidentally killed one of Gnome's team. But all in this chaos, I witnessed one thing, and that was one player staying extremely calm, and that was Emil's team, who were sitting on a ship waiting to swoop in and grab control of the nether portal. That's right, they technically didn't need to have the soul knife to be able to own the nether. If they built a castle around it, technically the rules would protect them. As long as the portal's open, which it was, they could stop anyone who owns a soul knife getting access to close it. But players were fighting all along the shores. Groups of players were dying, and all I could see was Emil's army of the undead getting bigger. Every time a player dies, they go to the dark side essentially. And as we came around the corner, this is when we knew things were really at melting point. Soccer's team and Gnome's team were having a fight, and it was a big scrap because Soccer had accidentally killed one of Gnome's members. And their fight was pushing across to us and following us and spilling into Mikey's land, where we were just trying to get back to Mikey's to protect the soul knife. We didn't want anyone knowing that we had it. It had to be a secret. And when we got to Mikey's castle, we were told that Mikey and JD Kelly made a deal. JD Kelly was a neutral nation that lived right next to Mikey, and they made a deal that if they get the soul knife, he would have it, because he wants to control the nether, and I see no issue with that. A neutral nation controlling the nether is the best option that we could have for the whole entire circle. So as he went down to break up the fight between Soccer and Gnome on his land, me and Sorrow continued to quest to deliver the soul knife to JD Kelly's. And finally, when JD Kelly logged online, he was wise, and he knew that even though he's neutral, people will still try to mess with him. So he asked Sorrow if he would take the soul knife and lock it away in his land, as Sorrow has a vault that no one knows about. Jamie knows that if Emil owns a nether portal now, the soul knife is practically useless, and hiding the soul knife is the best option for all of us now. We were shoved up the stairs, and there he was. The guy that we're talking about. The guy that this episode is dedicated towards. Emil Ruse, standing on his throne with the staff of the undead out. I don't know what's bigger, Emil's ego or his throne. We were told to take a seat and to wait. Soccer's team then came in. And as you can see, Soccer now has the Stormslander. He'd finally got it back because Emil had given it to him. I still don't fully understand why Soccer's on Emil's side, but Soccer loves his power, and he wants to keep it. And I feel like our side represents taking that away from him. And I believe the Stormslanding was given back to Soccer as a way of keeping him on that side. It took a while before talking began, because Emil had choreographed this to perfection, and I'm not sure if it was meant to intimidate us or not. And after this little act was done, it was now time to finally get down to business. But with Emil owning the nether, that also meant he now found the only brewing stand on the map. That was in the nether lost, and his team had found it. Emil wants to trade with the world now. Whoever has the smithing table should reveal. But none of us here have it. It hasn't been found yet. And it probably lies within the nether, we said. And that's when Emil asked about the Hades crystal. Who had that? And that was, of course, me. I didn't own it. It was technically Jack. He won it. But Jack did give it to me. And besides, I haven't seen Jack in ages, since he disappeared in the nether when he was about to fall to his fiery doom. Rainbow told me that he returned back to the jungle after that event, and Forrest and Jack led a great conquest and took over the whole entire jungle, kicking out Grim and all of Emil's members that were once there. And I was willing to trade that Hades crystal for something that Emil had on his back, and that was the Thalia's sword. See, I was missing that because I sacrificed it to save Sicko's life when we were in the Nether. I gave it to him to bring to Wilboat's team, so that he could hopefully survive if this was the end of my journey. But luckily we managed to escape the Nether. I just didn't escape with my sword. From what I'm aware, there's only 2 of these on the map, and Emil's holding one and someone else has another. My one. And I don't know if I'll ever see it again. So with an opportunity to get my weapon back. These Thalia swords are extremely rare and only come from villagers. So I was desperate. I wanted my weapon back. So I made the trade with Emil. The Hades crystal for the Thalias. And I'm not gonna lie. It felt amazing to have this weapon back that I've had since the start of my journey. And this is when our worst fear came to light. Herb had revealed that he was in possession of the soul knife, and as you know, we hid the soul knife inside a vault, and a few days ago, that vault was broken into. And not a word was said on the server, and no one came forward that they did it. And now here's Herb with the soul knife. He's the one who broke into our vault, and what could we do about it? Herb wanted to help Emil's cause, and to safeguard the nether portal from any threats. And obviously with the rules being the rules, only one god weapon can be held at a time on one player. So Emil has no other choice but to let Herb do this, and to hold the soul knife. Someone on our side had given him the information of where we vaulted it. That doesn't even belong to us. That is Jamie's property. And I'm sorry, I've been hiding something from you guys, but now it's time to declare it, and to let everyone know. But a few days ago, I found myself my own god weapon finally. And I'm going to make my own land, but I've learnt my lesson. I made a village before, and it got burnt down. And peace cannot come until this player right now, Emil Ruse, is underground, deep, and locked away. So with my god weapon, I declared war on Emil Ruse. Not the red team, but I'm sure they're going to declare war on us and fight alongside Emil. And I asked Soccer if he truly wanted to be on this side because the beef is not with him. But Soccer had chosen his side and he was staying there. And he was willing to go to war. It was now time to go. War had been declared, but that doesn't mean we have to fight today. We fight when we're both ready to. But as we tried to exit, the way out was blocked. A drawbridge has been drawn, and tensions were now high. But Sorrow pulled the drawbridge over from the other side using an ender pearl. And we were quickly shoved out of the castle. It was back to the ship as quick as we could. While filling in the rest of the crew, Mikey was informed that his base was under attack. Not by Emil, but by Jacio and his bandits, who from what I know are definitely working with Emil. So without hesitation, we all started heading down to the south, charging towards Mikey's, with Mikey leading the way. As the horde of players got over the hill, everything looked fine at first. You could see fighting going on in the distance. But the main thing was Mikey's castle looked intact. A little bit of damage. That was all. But as we got closer, it became more clear. This was calculated. And it was destructive. Jacio's bandits had wiped out Mikey's castle. And here Jacio was, with my Thalia's sword. If I knew I was going to get handed one on a silver platter like this, I wouldn't have traded the Hades crystal. But having two on our team wouldn't be a bad idea. Jacio being a bandit means that the rules of war don't really apply to him. That weapon gives him some special rules, like being able to do some surprise attacks. Other nations have to give enemies 30 minutes prior or an hour's prior or the next day prior notice that they're going to be attacked. JCO had a whole entire party on him. A horde of players. There was no way he was going to get out of this alive. Unless Emil was coming down to save him. But Emil doesn't have the best track record for this. JCO was doing his best to defend himself. And I wanted to give him one chance to get captured. So I dragged him into a Discord call. I asked JCO, do you want to die? And he said no. Being a bandit, he's too selfish to die. And he also knows our team. He knows he can do stupid attacks like this. And we'll capture him and he won't have to die. Because that's what we stand for. We'll never slaughter people for no reason. We'll always try and conserve life. JCO knows if he gets captured, someone will come to save him. A few members were chasing down the rest of the bandits, and we used JCO as leverage to get the bandits to come here, otherwise we'll kill their leader. My Thalia's sword was handed back to me, dropped by JCO. I now had 2 in my possession. The bandits that survived the attack were now here, all rounded up, and it was time to capture them. Or that's what JCO thought. JCO chose a side. Should look at the red flag that the enemy have there on their shield. This is the end of the line for JCO's bandits. Capturing you will be a great idea because obviously then we'll have less people manning the old Never Fortress, which would be valuable to take right now. So look, we're going to capture you, but before that, we're going to kill every single one of you.
Oh no.
Oh wow. Okay.
I like this. Oh, I love this. I knew it.
Okay. No, you know what? Whatever
I've
works.
this for so long.
They chose a side, and we're at war. And desperate times call for desperate measures. It's not something we want to do, but if we want to win this war, we're going to have to be like our enemies a little. Maybe past me would have actually captured them. But I've learned my lesson now. You can't change the people. This was only a few hours into the war, and this much destruction had already taken place. It's almost making me think, what's going to come from this? Will we even have a world if we even win? All I know for certain is all the players here are willing to die for this cause. After those crazy events, it was easy to get lost. We needed to stay focused because a war was officially coming soon. The war planning had been agreed, and the rules of war were simple. A war channel was put on the Discord, and if you receive a ping, that means an attack was coming your way, and you had 30 minutes to get ready. All players had to log on and defend, and had to guess what castle they might be attacking. And if we ping them, the same for them. They'll have to guess what castle we're attacking. That was it. We all knew that it was about to be taking out castles, because if you want to control the world and defeat your enemies, they need to have no more homes, no strongholds they can go back to. Then, their power is truly gone. So, we were building a stronghold on Sorrow's Island, right across from Grimm's Nation. But as the team were building, and I was overseeing it, I couldn't help but notice Sicko running away, going off somewhere. As you know, Sicko just recently joined our side. I didn't think much of it, but I was curious. So I tried to follow him without him spotting me. He didn't need to go off to get supplies because all the supplies were already there. He was in a boat, and he sailed off. Now I was trying to be rational. I was thinking maybe he's going back to Sorrow's main island to maybe retrieve something. So I went back to the village to see. But he was nowhere to be seen at all. I even asked Crumpet who was here. He's on guard. He never saw Sicko enter the village. So where had Sicko gone? I think I know. The next day, the fortress was done. and it was time to inspect. This was a really interesting build because all the people from different nations had built this. They'd all worked together with resources. And the structure was exactly what we asked for. Just something simple that can sound the alarm if a mill is deciding to attack. Because how the rules of war work is that the enemies have to attack the closest thing in order. Gain ground almost. And the same has to go for us. It's just the way it needs to work, otherwise it's going to get too confusing. But a mill's base, a mill's castle, a mill's area is interesting. Because there's two fronts he can attack from. He can go for Gnome's Nation first, or he can come for Sorrow's. It's that simple. Gnome's Nation already has a fortress in it. That's not its capital city. If you're gonna attack a nation, you have to take down all the fortresses that lie inside the land before you can take on the capital city. It's just the rules we made that make it more interesting. Back to the castle though. IGN, Nick and others were showing me all of it. And inside, they even had a prison. A cell. Which was perfect. I asked Sicko to go inside and see how it works. He went in and I told him to stay there. Just as he threw the button back out to me, because there was a button on the inside. I interrogated Sicko. And I asked, where did he go yesterday? And to my surprise, he was honest about where he went. He said he went down to Stormslanding to go to his house to get his stuff. But the problem was, when he did that, Stormslanding was filled with players. And Sicko's house is pretty much in the center. How do I know this? Well, a few hundred days ago, I was at Spiny's funeral. The teammate that we lost inside the nether. Watching from a distance, I didn't even know I was there. And that's when I noticed Sicko's house. There's no way he would have been able to enter without getting captured or killed. This is when I found out Sicko wasn't loyal to me. I expected him to be because of what I'd done for him. But that's not how loyalty works. He was loyal to soccer because he had got him on the server in the first place. Just because I gave him my weapon to keep him alive, it didn't mean anything to him. Sicko, for now, was meant to remain in jail. Until it was time to deal with him. Sorrow had some bad news. And instead of telling me, he wanted to take me there. So I got in a boat with Sorrow immediately. And we began traveling to the destination. I knew exactly where we were. We were at Jamie's. Jamie's place was completely decimated. Destroyed. See, when Sorrow tried to message Jamie on Discord, Jamie responded with that he can't give any information. Under the rules, he's not allowed. So with this, he's probably captured. And there's only one team we know that's definitely done this. Or one side. And that's the red side. Killing JCO's team felt good, but this was the price. This was done out of retaliation. Emil knew Jamie was a neutral nation and wasn't involved. So this was to get under our skin and to play mind games. We luckily had bargaining power. We got a spare Thalia's sword and JCO's god weapon. We could use this to trade for Jamie back. As we were recording this, it was about 1 PM and the war was officially meant to start at 3 PM. That's when a ping could come in at any time saying you're under attack. And you have 30 minutes to prepare. So we knew if we were going to do a trade for Jamie, we had to do it now soon. So we decided here, on a neutral island, out in the middle of nowhere, that we would trade for Jamie back here. Me and Mill's team back. We hand him something that he wants. A god weapon or the Thalia's sword. And hopefully we get Jamie. But before we can do that, Sorrow needs to ask one of the admin team to move his ship here. So if anything goes wrong, we always have a place to defend ourselves with. So while Sora does that, I decided to head back to the castle we were just at to bring some members down for the trade. Sora reached out to Emil, and at first there was no contact. It was like he wasn't interested. But then Emil bit back and asked for the cords and where to meet him. Sora said the cords and said we're on a neutral island. And both teams had the same idea. Sora informed me that the ship moved here before even any players of Emil's were here. Since the war is so close to beginning, no one trusts anyone. Sora and I both agreed that we would try and trade the god weapon that we got from JCO first to Emil. And if he doesn't take that, we're willing to pay the price of giving him the Thalius and the god weapon. But that's when we noticed that JD Kelly in Emil's crowd is Jamie. He's dead. How do I know this? Because he's wearing the dead skin that you have to put on if you've been revived by Emil. Jamie is gone, and we can't trade for him back now. None of us even noticed that he was dead. No one pressed tab to even see his skin. No one even thought to guess it. This was an utter blow. And it's the price of war. So quick thinking, I wasn't going to hand him over the god weapon or even the Thalius sword. No way. So I started talking about something that I knew he wouldn't even give us anything for. But I didn't want to let him know that killing Jamie had devastated us, shocked us. So I informed him that I had a few players on his side in custody. Yeah, that's right, it's now a few players. Because when we locked Sicko up, a few minutes later, a few people tried to break him out. But luckily IGN Nick and JJQ spotted this and imprisoned those players. After a long-winded trade, Emil didn't want them. And that was fine. And now to get inside Emil's head too. I showed him that I had the god weapon just before leaving. It was now time to get back to the ship and to wait for Emil's team to leave. The war is about to begin, and now we do not want to get caught off guard. It took a while for Emil's team to leave, but we knew they were gone when the ship disappeared. It had been moved back to Emil's castle. We now felt a little bit safe. And now it was time to do something that we didn't really expect to be doing today. And it was time to say goodbye to Jamie. And when our trade was taking place with Emil, Jack has finally graced our screens. And he's providing his replay mod so I can tell his side of the story. And he's currently right now in the Badlands, just outside the nether portal. And he needs to get himself inside that nether. Undetected. He can't be spotted. A lot of people are counting on him. And what he's about to do here could change the tide of the war completely. He's just going to have to wait for the right moment to enter. And we wish him the best of luck. Now, back to my side of the story. So we went to the place that was most fitting. Jamie's land. And we said our goodbye. And instead of Emil trying to devastate us, I think this kind of motivated us. It gave us drive. Goodbye, Jamie. You did a lot for this world, and we appreciate that. "3 p.m. had now passed, and we were waiting for Emil's team to make the first move because we weren't in the luxury position of making the first move. We're highly outnumbered, and one wrong move, like we said, means Emil's team gets bigger. Now, remember I said that we had a bit of a problem with people trying to break out Sicko? Knight in Red was one of those players. To get out of this cell, he gave us the information that Emil is planning to attack Gnome's team first, their nation. We already had planned for this, because we had been tactically playing mind games with the enemies. The first ping came in from Emil's side, and it was around about 8 p.m, and the war started at 3. It seemed like both sides were waiting for each other to attack first. But now Emil was making his first move. I'm not gonna lie, guys. We're terribly outnumbered. We know this. If you're looking for a big hero story and stuff, this isn't it. Because this right here, it's real. After we got the ping, we were moving down to the first castle in Gnomesland, taking the bet that they were going to be attacking here. And we were right, because we had spotted them along the coast. And this was where they were planning to attack. They couldn't change their mind now. They had to stick with this attack plan. This was a castle that was built overnight. It's looking out to Emil's direction. And this is what they were coming to attack. This isn't a fortress that we're planning to hold. Look at it. It's going to be overrun within seconds. But we wanted to try and test the enemies. And to try to take out a few if we could. So I ordered everyone into the castle. And I began digging the cobblestone on the floor. This was all one big trap. A dangerous area for the enemies to enter. The trap was set, and all we could do now is wait. And as the time got closer to the 30-minute mark, Emil started to move in. They had come around to the front, which was one thing we weren't expecting. We expected them to come from the water. But they were perfectly in line with the trapped area. We literally want them just to flood into our base without thinking. Because once they find out about that area, they're not going to go anywhere near it. So I think we're going to get maybe 1 or 2 kills if this goes right. Only if it goes right. Time felt like it was moving so slow, as both sides were just watching and getting ready for the time to hit the 30 minutes. And when it did, arrows were let loose and exchanged from both sides. There were so many arrows, eventually it started to cause so much frame rate lag. And we were all struggling to play. But we knew this wasn't going well, because the team were being too passive with their arrows. We wanted them to flood in with force, but they weren't doing that. We were surprised with how Emil was taking it so slow. Usually, tactically, he's aggressive, fast moving. But here, it almost felt like he was being careful. We designed the base to make it look weak. And when the enemies did break in, it was the completely wrong section. And it was over. If we don't leave now, the castle will be flooded. And it will be overrun. We had to abandon. We can't lose any players. The players we lose, Emil's army gets bigger. It's simple. But as we retreated, we did manage to get 1 kill on Emil's side. And that was all we needed. Emil had now gained that castle. And it was up to him if he's going to capture it. Or leave it. Then, just as we were running away, a second ping came into the Discord. And an attack will be taking place in 30 minutes. This was Emil's campaign. To steamroll over Gnome's nation. There was now 1 more castle between Gnome's capital. And like I said, rules-wise, Emil has to take out this castle to be able to attack Gnome's capital city. And as we retreat, here's an update on Jack. With all the chaos going down in Gnome's land, he's able to monopolize on this. And he's managed to sneak his way into the Nether undetected. He's done it. And now he can continue his part of the mission. We did say if we're going to win this war, we're going to have to play it smart. And more will come with this, guys, I promise. And more will be revealed. I want you guys to experience it how I experienced it. Not knowing what entirely was going on. Was Jack still alive? Did he make it? Well, he's in there. And now, he needs to continue his part of the mission. But back to us, because the war with Gnome's land is not over yet. And we have 1 more castle to defend. The castle we were just at was a decoy. It was meant to buy us more time and to hopefully let them fall into a trap. But it didn't work. This castle we're heading to now, it's a proper castle. A place where we can actually defend. But the problem is, we're overwhelmed by numbers. And strategically, this isn't a fight we can win. Not by traditionally holding a castle down anyway. We're gonna have to be creative, or I suppose take more risks. I ordered everyone into the castle, put down the gates, and to take positions. Gnome was a really great ally, and I didn't want to make it look like we were ready to just abandon this place if we needed to. I wanted to give it a fight, because Gnome had worked really hard in this land. And also, some players on the team, this was their home. And if we just abandoned it and left it, how can I expect them to defend other people's homes? It just wouldn't work. I decided to show some courage. I knew, obviously, me being me, a YouTuber, well known on this server anyway, that if I was on the outside of the walls, fighting and defending, outside in the field, maybe I would keep enemies away from the castle, giving them a chance to defend. We had to split up Emil's force, it was the only way. But I needed someone with me, so I called down IGN Nick. He had just lost his land as he lived with Mikey. So I knew if there was anyone aggressive, it would be him. He had a lot of anger to burn. We were waiting inside this house outside the castle, waiting for Emil's army. We had only minutes before the next battle would take place. But as I went out into the field, with nearly the order to pull everyone out of the castle and to head up north to Sorrowsland, Emil and Sucker's army emerged. And here you can just see how outnumbered we really are. I think at first, a lot of Emil's members were very confused about why I was on the outside. But at the same time, it didn't have the response that I wanted. Emil was still laser focused on that castle, and me being here kind of felt useless. I kept getting closer and closer, just trying to let them know I was here. But the final seconds were now here and the war was about to begin. And Emil was obviously letting them know not to focus on me. He knew what I was up to. He knew that I wanted to split them up. Emil's not that dumb. The trusted leaders and myself had given the team to defend this with all they've got. If this falls, it's Gnome's capital next. They charged on into the base because it was time to fight. And not a single player was focused on me. So I charged in, going for a player that looked like it was AFK, but he came back just in time. I just wanted some to focus on me, to take some stress away from the people in the walls. And it was working. It was really working. My plan was to try and bring a few players back to the house where IGN Nick was hiding, because IGN Nick had a strength potion. So I told Nick to come out and join me, and to fight on the battlefield. Some members fought outside the castle, while a lot defended from in. A few of our team ran, but that was on my orders. I said, if you don't feel comfortable fighting this war, leave and fight another day. Being dead means nothing. And I think Gnome's nation understand that we are outnumbered here. But as we were fighting outside, I got some information on the inside that they were beginning to retreat. Which none of this made sense. They were leaving. Something had distracted them. Something more of interest had made Emil go, do you know what? I'm going to leave this. Even though he nearly had the castle. And he left. And the players inside the castle said he was heading south. Something had got his attention. But I don't know what yet. But the players that were here and we were fighting on the battlefield were trying to escape. But we weren't letting them go that easy. We were fighting them along the riverbed. Desperately trying to get a few kills on them. While they were desperately trying to escape. To regroup with Emil. And whatever just caught their attention. There was obviously bigger things going on their side than us. Just what was it? But these two players, we weren't letting go. Me and Nick were on them. And I wanted to let Nick have this instead of ordering him back to the castle. So I went along with Nick to give him help. He needed to get some sort of revenge for what the red team done to his home. I struck down R Springs, and he was dead. And now it was Dragon Smoke. And he had just watched his friend die right in front of him. And he was now on the run. But I was giving Nick this moment. Usually I would just leave him be. But with this, I wanted to support Nick and to chase him down. But we chased him for thousands of blocks. And nothing really came from it. But I was getting into familiar territory. And I knew where this player was heading. All the way to Stormslanding. All the way to Stormslanding we chased him. And until he got back to safety. And we couldn't chase no more. As the rules of Stormslanding and the rules of nations and capital cities gave him the protection he needed. As we left, he said, "Welcome to Stormslanding, boys." He knew we couldn't go any closer. He taunted us. What? Who had distracted a Mills team enough to leave a fight? What's going on? I think we were all shocked. The fact that this place was standing. The fact that a mill just left. Was it mind games that a mill was playing with us? I don't know. But if this was a trap, or if it was mind games, it was working. And the enemies felt distracted now. Something bigger was going on. And they were occupied with that. So of course, with us being strategic and trying to be crafty, we decided we'd turn the pressure on them. It was time to chase them, and them not chase us. Now, while I wasn't online, something big happened, and really interesting. Herp, the player who stole our soul knife, had accidentally dropped the soul knife into lava. And the only reason we know this is because he broadcast it to everyone that was online on the server, and this spread it like wildfire throughout our Discord and the server itself. Now, the soul knife is a god weapon, and god weapons can only be destroyed by a specific volcano in the world, and that volcano lies in Forest's land. Accidentally destroying a god weapon has never happened yet. So will the admins give the weapon back, or do the red team now no longer have the soul knife? If so, that means no one has it anymore, and it's gone. Only time will tell. I was heading back up to Sarah's land. I had to be careful though, and I had to take a route that was rather dangerous, that went in between Herb and Emil's land and Grimm's. Because Soccer had put a boat in between Stormslanding and Sorrow's land. So that if we want to attack Stormslanding, we need to attack the boat first, since the boats act like castles and ground to be conquered. And I wanted to take my odds taking this route, because more of Soccer's land were online. And going that way could be dangerous. But it was time now to deal with one of the prisoners, Sicko. Had to do something that would make him useful. But there's nothing I could think about. And there was nothing I could do with him. And it was time to give him back to the enemies, as a gesture of goodwill, and to hope that if things do go horribly wrong, that hopefully they'd give some mercy, maybe not to me, but maybe to others in this group. So now knowing that there was a ship in between Stormslanding and Sorrow's land, it was close. I could trade him off and give him back there. I could hand him over at the ship, as long as they don't shoot me coming up. But we prepared for that. And I'd made a white shield in hopes that they'd see it. But just to be safe, I got Wolf and JJQ to follow us, just to tag along in case anything breaks out. This was also a great excuse to get close to the ship and to see if we could see anything they were planning. But to be honest, I think it was there as a warning. Because if this ship falls, it means Stormslanding is next. it was smart of Soccer to put it there. As I got closer, I could see that there were people on the ship, and Soccer was on it too. I took my time slowly going up to it, wanting to get spotted and not to surprise them. With them now knowing I'm here and that I don't mean a threat, I pulled up. And this is where I gave Soccer a nod. And he gave a nod back. See, this is the difference between Emil and his team. Soccer, you can feel for. He understands. I can never expect Emil's team to give mercy, but Soccer's team, it's a whole nother ball game. There's a chance. And if there's a chance, it's worth it. And that was the trade. With the enemy team being distracted, it was now time for them to have our little attack. For us to try and gain ground from them. We knew something was happening. No pings came into the Discord. The enemies were rather quiet. If there was ever a time to make a move, it was now. Sure, it was a little bit sooner than we expected. We wanted to play the long-winded game. But the team were motivated, and we're feeling good. If the enemies are trying to play mind games on us, it's not working. Because with them leaving the castle in Gnome's Land, it's motivated them to think that our team is stronger. And I need them to think that. It's like I said, we're outnumbered. But our plan is to take over that fortress. Because we need all the castles that we can get. The more castles we own, the more chances of fighting we get. Like I said, if we lose every nation here, the war's over. They win. If we manage to survive that long. We needed to throw the enemies off as much as possible. We pinged the enemies, giving them 30 minutes to prepare when we were just ready. And to throw the enemies off completely, Gnome sacrificed his ship and put it between Emil's land and Herp's land. Because maybe they might be thinking we might go for Grimm's city. Or we might go for Herp. It's perfectly in between. This was to try and get their forces to spread out. It's now time to attack. We had 2 squads, one on the ship and the rest here. And everyone thought we were going to attack by sea, because that's the only place you can attack from, right? But instead of leading the attack from the sea, I took them outside our front gates and led them to a secret passage built by a player that I cannot disclose yet, but it's perfectly legal. It's time to bring an army right to the center of Herp's fortress. I split the group up into 2 groups, Group A and Group B. Group A went one way with me and Group B took the top of the castle. But when we got here, we could see that they were definitely distracted. The ship was working, and they were laser focused on that. And strategically, the enemies had done something bad. Something really they shouldn't have done. They were on the outside of their walls, and we were already inside. We just now had to kick them off the island. And this was then ours. Even though they had the numbers, we had managed to surprise them, even though they knew the attack was coming. They were retreating, and they were going now to Grimm's land, to his fortress. The ship distraction, the secret tunnel, it worked, and we had taken this castle with no casualties and barely any damage done to this structure. This castle was now ours, and removing anything that symbolizes our enemies. Blue team had now gained an extra castle that gives us a slight advantage. And with this being such a success, it was now time to keep rolling through the enemies and to keep going at them. It was confirmed. There was no mind games going on. Something was happening inside the red team. Something big. Something that was bigger than this war. We pinged the enemy, letting them know another attack is coming. And this time, we're heading to the ship because we're going to use this to attack Grimm's port nation. And this one's personal for Rainbow, because Rainbow, Jack and Forrest waged a great war against Grimm, who used to live in the jungle. And Grimm escaped, Rainbow gained the ground and got his nation, but Grimm escaped with the god weapon for that land and didn't give it. So for Rainbow, attacking Grimm isn't anything new for him. We were on the ship, and this time they knew exactly where we were attacking. And they were all there. And more reinforcements were heading to Grimm's nation now. And the red team were now reinforcing the stronghold at Grimm's. Whatever they were up to, they were now back focused on us. But still, there was no signs of a mill. It wasn't here. The clock hit 30 minutes, and it was time to go. Our plan was to get into the center of their town, not fight them head on. So we were meant to charge right through. They'd tried to block off the port, but they didn't finish the walls exactly. We jumped into the water and charged towards the center of the town. This is hopefully something they wouldn't be expecting. We needed someone on a boat so that we could use it to park her up. Monty parked it, jumped up, and made our way onto the docks. Let's go, let's go. Lovely stuff, people.
Oh no, I'm getting chased down.
Oh god, I'm lagging.
Oh, I'm getting chased down by a
And we're in. Right, there we go, guys. Don't think there's any stairs here, is there? Nope.
Pushy should roll.
Lovely stuff, guys. Our strategy? Stay in the center of town. Lucas, in the middle. Stay in the middle of the town right now. Let's fight. And fight. We're in the castle. All we had to do now was kick them out. That's when we lost one of our first members. A strength 2 potion had sliced right through him, and he was killed within seconds. Side sheet was responsible for this, so I tried to chase him down to get as much revenge as possible. And with all the running he did, I lost him, but I was on another enemy. We were slowly but surely driving the enemies out, and that's where Grimm, the leader of this nation, was stuck in cobwebs. And everyone was trained on him. And within seconds he died. This was huge, because the person who owns this base is now dead. And that has to be a boost for morale. And the god weapon that Rainbow rightfully deserves was on Grimm. It's now his. It's returned to him. Grimm might have survived the jungle, but he didn't survive here. With this, the team got second wind, motivation, and we were driving them out. This was a shock for us, and I believe it was a massive shock for the enemies. There were enemies outside the wall who were staying and fighting, trying to buy as much time for them to get back to a Mills base, because that's right, a Mills base is the closest here. And if we go on to attack more, a Mills castle is next, which we thought was out of sight for a long time. But with enemies being here, we couldn't ping for another attack, because we had to make sure this attack was fully done within the rules. So these players were buying more time. So we ordered everyone on them to take him out as quick as possible, so that we could begin the next attack, giving the enemies little time to prepare. And after a long-winded fight, finally, the last enemy was slain. We ordered everyone back into the castle, and we made sure to clear it and sweep. Make sure no enemies are hiding inside. And to, of course, destroy anything that symbolizes the enemies. This was now ours. This one wasn't as quick as taking Herb's base. But that's good, because we fought for this one. But the next base is going to be a Mills. And it's not going to be easy. We need to prepare. And if we don't go in with a plan, we're going to die with this one. They'll give it everything they've got to defend us. We're going to have to shock them. Mind games will win this. I went to the docks that they barricaded, not allowing any ships to enter. It was time to blow that up and free it, in case we wanted to move any ships in. But I wanted to blow that up because I was waiting for something. Something so important that it would change the tides of war. And I'm sorry, guys. I've been hiding something from you, and I gotta tell you the truth now because I can no longer keep it a secret, and the whole server is about to know. But a few days ago, just before I handed Sicko back over to soccer, I actually slipped off from the group, and I went deep into Sorrow's forest. Sorrow has been hiding a massive secret. After vaulting the soul knife many days ago, Sorrow then went on to show me what he had discovered. At first, when he discovered this land, he thought that there was nothing here, there was no god weapon for it. But he discovered a custom underground build that holds many secrets. And the god weapon for this land is the smithing table itself. This whole time, we have had the smithing table, and the trusted leaders have been keeping it quiet, even amongst our own players. And a few days when I slipped away, I actually went to inspect to see how well the work is going. And I looked in, and Forest, Sorrow, Rainbow, and Midori were working away on the netherite sets. Our goal this whole time has been to get 20 full sets of netherite, all prepared, and when the time is right, bring it out so the enemies don't see it coming. And now we've secured the docks, and Jack, Sorrow, and Mikey are on their way with the full 20 netherite sets to arm this army right here with the protection that we're gonna need to carry us through the rest of this war, because now we're heading towards a mill. And it's finally time to end this. And to take you back a bit more, Jack has been involved in this story a lot. And you remember when Jack was trying to get into the nether? Yeah, he was fooling our enemies, tricking them and playing mind games. Jack's mission was to infiltrate the nether and go to an Easter egg that was underneath Mikey and Sorrow's old castle inside there. This Easter egg was discovered by Mikey and Sorrow's team when they were mining. And it was an Easter egg that was referencing Faction Duck, who was the original murderer on the Murder Island, and it looked like an impressive build and something that was built by the admins. So Jack destroyed the reference and changed the text to the smithing table. Then he placed down a fake book that said, "Congrats, you have just found the smithing table, and the rules apply. You must keep the smithing table inside the nether at all times. It can never leave. You can move it from here, but it has to stay inside the nether." This was designed for the enemies to find us. After Jack had set up this lovely mind game, he then went back to the nether portal in full netherite armor that was supplied by Sorrow and Forest. And he wanted to get caught by one of the guards at the nether portal. He wanted them to chase him. And they did just that. The guards had followed Jack all the way to where he made the fake smithing table location. And it worked. We just didn't expect it to work so well. That's why Emil's team abandoned the fight at Gnome's castle and just suddenly upped and left. They got word that Jack was in full netherite in the nether and the smithing table is potentially here. And that's why the enemy team were so distracted and their army was fragmented and split apart. Some in the nether and some at this fight today. I'm sure Emil now is making his way back to the castle because he knows we're coming for him. But he won't expect the biggest netherite army on the server ever to be knocking on his front door. A sight that I never thought we'd see. A full netherite army charging across this world. And it's on the good side. We kept it a secret because we knew it needed to stay a secret. If Emil knew about this much earlier, this war could be a lot different right now. We blew our way into Emil's. It was now time. This was the mind games we wanted. For the first time, and for hopefully the last time, they're seeing a full army of netherite. They had the full castle in lockdown mode with the drawbridge opened. Only a few of us had pearls, but not enough to get across. We'd have to find another way in. And TNT would help us do that. Because with the same strategy again, we wanted to attack from the inside out. Not head on. We blew straight into the throne room. We wanted to get nice and close. We realized the bow spam, it doesn't kill anyone. But what does is swords and axes. Barry was here fighting. And we knew Barry would at least go down with his ship. But Emil was nowhere to be seen. Of course. How could I not? I destroyed Emil's throne. We were getting reports all over that Emil's team were running, and we really didn't understand this. The red team were leaving the castle, abandoning ship. Christ, even the zombies were leaving. And they're meant to just fight and do nothing. They're dead anyway. But I knew one thing. Barry was done here. And if anything, maybe a falling out had happened between Emil and Barry. Because Barry wasn't running. And he had a whole entire team on him. So I ordered everyone out, except the leaders, to stay here. And to take on Barry. And to end his journey. In his amazing build that he created. His helmet popped. And soon after, he dropped to the floor dead. It was over for him. And by the seams of it, it seems like it's nearly over for Emil. That's the problem. No one on Emil's team is actually loyal. The drawbridge was closed. And we could head on out. And all you could see was Emil's team running for the shore. Trying to escape. With Emil nowhere to be seen. Jack, being Jack, wanted to continue the chase, hunting down Emil's team. I have no control over Jack, and no one does. So I let him go. But I did tell him to take IGN Nick with him. He's been by my side since the start, and he'll fight with you. He's loyal. So they went off, and Mikey went with them too. We had to clear this castle out. Make sure no one was hiding here. The castle was cleared, and no one was hiding. They had left. They had abandoned the fortress. None of us could believe it. They had one more castle that we knew of, and that was the Nether Portal. That was the last castle they owned. And where they were most likely heading. And we knew they were, because Jack was following a crowd of them there. We pinged for the final attack, for the red team army. And still Soccer, with all this, was nowhere to be seen. He had not came to Emil's aid. And as we were leaving Emil's base, we could see a group of Emil's army. They were standing there like they were ready for a last stand, and we thought we would be battling them here. But they saw us, and they jumped into boats. These zombies were almost nearly breaking the rules. That's how scared they were of us. The zombies have nothing to live for. They're dead players. The whole point of them is to be here and just to make the world feel alive, and when battles come, there'll always be a nation that has a lot of players, and that'll be the evil side. And these guys are running. They'd abandoned Emil, which wasn't really allowed to happen, like I said. It's not in the rules. They have to stay loyal to him. But in the moment, they've just lost that. But we were charging down to the south because things were escalating quickly, and Jack had warned us that Emil and a few of his members were down at the docks near Jacio's land. They were heading towards the Nether Portal, and Jack engaged in the fight. But sadly, Jack underestimated the power of his Strength 2 potion, especially in a trusted player's hands. The gear they have is so powerful. A mill drank a strength 2. And with that... No! Got never right. We need to get that guy. Oh, it's a mill. It's a mill.
You didn't pick up. You didn't pick
This
all
is
of it
so
up.
good
Hold up.
content.
Sorry.
Jack, are you there? Jack's not even speaking. Did he lag out or something? Jack had died. And the worst thing was, we couldn't even honor him for a second. We had to chase a mill. And we had to finish the mission. And finally kill him. No castle will give him protection. No rules will keep him alive. He'll have no safety. We sweep through Jaceo's nation, making sure there was no enemies hiding. We wanted them to all be in one place when we attack. And finally, here it is. Emil was in his castle, with the members that were loyal to him, which wasn't very many. And as we peeked over the edge to look down on Emil, he was firing arrows, taking shots at us, and if anything, I felt sorry for him. The arrows he were firing were pathetic, and the army he had now wasn't even an army. All the talk and how he treated players has obviously backfired on him, and that's when Soccer's team emerged. But as you can see, they're not on Emil's side, but they're also not on our side either. You see, when we handed over Sicko, we handed him over, and we told Sicko to tell him the deal. And the deal was that if we win this war, Soccer can have all of Emil's nation, can even have Sorrow's nation, where the smithing table is held, and must stay, as long as when this war is won, you leave our nations alone forever, and you stick to the treaty. And I said, I know you're part of this deal if you don't show up for any of the attacks we're about to do on Emil's nation. And that's why Soccer was not there. Emil, it's over for you now. You have no place to run. Once this castle is taken out, we can chase you down. We charged, wasting no time to finish this. And there was one last and final plot to the story. And I'm sorry I kept this a secret, but I thought it would be better storytelling to not let you know. To keep you on the edge of your seat. But since the bounty hunter days of when I was hunting down Wilbo, we have been planning to get someone on the inside of Emil's team to destroy them within. And when we captured Wilbo, he was meant to be our key to getting on the inside of Emil. Not through Wilbo himself, but we knew Wilbo, we planned for it, would escape, and one of Gnome's members would go rogue. And that member was Herp. Yeah, you heard me correctly. That's the guy who stole our soul knife. See, Herp was on our side this whole time, and he went into the Nether expedition with Wilbo, knowing that Wilbo will definitely try and gain some power inside there. And instead of Herp resisting Wilbo's power, he actually went along with it and pretended to be on Wilboat's side. The plan was to keep Wilboat alive, so that then Wilboat would lead Herp to a mill. But we had one problem. Wilboat actually died in the nether. I wasn't trying to kill him, but he accidentally burnt to death. And that put a spanner in our work, but still Herp had managed to infiltrate his way into a mill's team by taking over one of Gnome's castles. And then the icing on the cake was when Sorrow broke into his own vault, took the soul knife, and handed it over to Herp, and made it look like there had been a break-in, that Herp had broken into our vault. This sold a mill straight away, and he thought Herp was on his side. And during this whole season, Herp had been feeding us ancient debris, and he's also the player that let Jack into the nether. And once Jack was done his mission and it came time for him to escape the nether, Herp came to his aid and dropped him 2 invisible potions and handed him over the soul knife. This is when Herp pretended to burn the soul knife, but actually Jack was leaving the nether invisible with the soul knife in his inventory, safe and sound. And that's how we're closing the portal right now. This has been one big long-winded plan, and problems had happened, but we adapted and overcame. Herp has been helping us all this time. He even made the secret tunnel into his own base. And now you know. We beat our enemies with pure strategy, and we played the admins at their own game. And now, Emil is still alive, but the portal is closed. We're gonna make sure it never opens again. Emil can rule the Underworld, but he can't have the Overworld. This means the server has no source of dead players coming back to life, and no way of undead armies waging war against the players who have survived the past wars. But this story, this video is not over yet, and there's a few final things we need to do. We need to travel to Jack's home and say goodbye to our friend. And well, the rest, it's history. And to reward you for watching nearly a 4-hour-long video, here's a teaser of the new world. It looks incredible. Will we be able to survive though is the question, because this time around a lot of things are going to be different. If you made it this far, make sure to comment the return to be part of the 4-hour club, and I'll see you soon for a completely new adventure.